blumsybox.com. Bloomsy Box, simply better blooms. More info available at bloomsybox.com, code TOM. And Boll & Branch Sheets, crafted for the common good. More info at bollandbranch.com, code TOM.
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Unsettling Truths, the ongoing dehumanizing legacy of the doctrine of discovery by Mark Charles and Soon-Chan Rah. This is from chapter 1. You cannot discover lands that are already inhabited. I, Mark, said this almost under my breath as I walked past a line of men dressed as Spanish sailors from the 1490s. I was in front of Union Station in Washington, D.C., near the massive statue of Christopher Columbus overlooking the United States Capitol. Every Columbus Day, there's an official ceremony in this plaza honoring Columbus as the discoverer of America. I had stumbled upon this ceremony by accident the year prior. There were a few non-natives holding signs and protesting the ceremony, but nothing very disruptive. I went back the following year primarily out of curiosity. I wasn't intending to protest, nor did I want to make a scene. As I walked up behind the statue and approached the group of men dressed as Spanish sailors, the words just came out of my mouth. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. As I walked further down the line, I said it again, this time a little louder. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. As I continued walking, I came to the front of the line where a group of men dressed in suits were standing. I repeated myself, making sure they could hear me. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. Suck it up, was the reply I heard as I kept walking. By this time, I'd walked around the statue and reached the front, where a small stage had been erected and chairs set up for people to watch the ceremony. It hadn't started yet, but more than half the audience was seated, waiting for it to begin. So I stopped near the center, turned toward the crowd, and in a calm but loud voice, I said to the people, you cannot discover lands already inhabited. That process is known as stealing, conquering, or colonizing. The fact that America calls what Columbus did discovery reveals the implicit racial bias of the country, that Native Americans are not fully human. Quickly, one of the white men dressed in a suit walked over and interrupted me. You are not welcome here, he said, as he grabbed my arm and began walking me away. I attempted to explain the inappropriateness of both celebrating this holiday as well as hosting this ceremony, but instead of engaging in conversation, he threatened me with arrest and escorted me from the area. As I walked away from the gathering, I was amused at his words and the irony of their context. A white man participating in a public ceremony honoring Christopher Columbus as the discoverer of America, telling a native man he was not welcome in that space. How did a flawed assumption about the place of the indigenous population in U.S. society become normative? How are assumptions so deeply ingrained in the American psyche and imagination that dysfunctional and oppressive actions emerge? How did a dysfunctional idea and worldview form that allows for the displacement of native bodies? One of the explanations for the formation of this dysfunctional worldview is the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery is a set of legal principles that govern the European colonizing powers, particularly during the administration of indigenous land, regarding the administration. It is the primary legal precedent that still controls native affairs and rights, and international law formulated in the 15th and 16th centuries. From a theological perspective, the legal and political role of the doctrine of discovery is rooted in a dysfunctional theological imagination, that shaped the European colonial settler worldview. The doctrine emerged from a series of 15th century papal bulls, which are official decrees by the Pope that carry the full weight of his ecclesiastical office. On June 18, 1452, Pope Nicholas V issued the papal bull Dum Diversus, which initiated the first set of documents that would compose the doctrine of discovery. The official decree of the Pope granted permission to King Alfonso V of Portugal, quote, to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens, Muslims, and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever, held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his or their use and profit. End of quote from Pope Nicholas's papal bull of 1452. Dum Diversus would identify the Saracens, a common term for Muslims at the time, and pagans, essentially identifying any non-Christians as others, as those who could be targeted for, quote, perpetual slavery. The papal bull intentionally used language that identified those outside the European Christian world and enforced the Western theological imagination of non-Europeans as other. The Portuguese took these ecclesiastical statements to heart and perpetrated the slave trade from the African continent to the European and the American continents. As a Christian ruler, the King of Portugal would have power endowed from the church to take possession of the other as slave labor from the continent of Africa. The pagan African body was just another commodity to be taken for the pleasure and profit of the European Christian body, the one made most fully in the image of God. In January of 1454, Pope Nicholas authored another bull. The book is Unsettling Truths by Charles.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So my friend George just sent me a, by the way, top of the morning to you, just sent me a screenshot from CNN that says, breaking news, in final bid for victory, Trump changes name to Joe Biden. Really? No, I get it. It's a spoof, but it's hysterical. Anyway, we've got a lot going on today. Our entire second hour is going to be Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who is an authority on authoritarians and has written numerous books on the topic. And we're going to do an hour-long deep dive into autocracy versus democracy, among other things. I think you're going to find it absolutely fascinating. And in our third hour, Mark Ruffalo has executive produced a new movie, The Invisible Hand. And the producers are going to be with us of that movie, Melissa Troutman and Joshua Boaz Pribanic, to talk about that and how it works and what it's all about and what are the rights of nature. It's really a remarkable movie and or documentary. So we'll get into all of that. And there's a bunch of stuff in the news, and let me lay out a few things for you, and then we can talk about it at 202-808-9925. So, first of all, I think probably the most underreported story since May has been Mitch McConnell trying to block first the HEROES Act, and then, the Democrats came back and said, okay, $3 trillion is too much for you. How about $2 trillion? And there was another piece of legislation. I'm not sure it ever had a name, but it was like the, how's this act? And he has refused to even allow either of these pieces of legislation to even be discussed on the floor of the Senate. And, now we're talking about maybe there's a compromise that we can blah-de-blah-de-blah. But what nobody seems to be talking about is that Mitch McConnell has been holding your health and your economic welfare, if you're one of the 20 million Americans who have lost your job or the 10 million Americans who have lost your health care, or the probably 30 or 40 million Americans who've seen, your economic fortunes diminish substantially over the last little less than a year, 9 months or so. that Mitch McConnell is holding this hostage in exchange for a limit on corporate liability, an end essentially to corporate liability. We've got for-profit corporations that have lied to their workers. We know this now. I mean, specifically some of these meatpacking plants that hire a lot of workers who don't speak English, literally lying to their workers in foreign languages, in Spanish or in other languages. We have, again, it was the meatpacking plants, but this goes way beyond them. Having executives start an office pool, a lottery or a pool, essentially a betting pool, on which of their employees are going to die first from COVID. Oh yeah, I'm going to bet on Ralph. He's about 100 pounds overweight. Well, I think Marge is going to be the one who's going to die. She's got diabetes, And well, what about George? He's got heart disease. I'll put $25 on George. I mean, they're literally doing that. You've got warehouse operations you've got all kinds of operations around the country where the employers are basically just saying to their employees, put your life at risk or you're fired. And, I'm not going to accommodate you. I'm not going to give you PPE. We're not going to change the way the workplace is organized to make it safer or less likely for you to contract this deadly disease. And by the way, most of the consequence of getting COVID-19 is not that you die. That happens mostly to people, over 60 and in poor health, or younger people who are really seriously obese or have diabetes or heart disease or severe asthma, things like that. Immune disorders, cancer, chemo. These are the really vulnerable populations. But And when you look at the numbers right now, here in Oregon, every night they publish the numbers and they break the diagnoses, how many people were diagnosed, into categories, 0 to 20 years old, 20 to 30 years old, 30 to 40 years old, 40 to 50 years old, like that. And what I'm seeing here in Oregon is between 20 and 40. Those two decades, those two 10-year slices are the ones that are exploding. And these are the people who are getting strokes, who are having permanent heart damage, who are experiencing kidney failure and they're going to be on dialysis for the rest of their lives, who are experiencing dementia that in all probability will never go away, who are getting chronic fatigue syndrome that may well be with them for the rest of their lives. And it's not a small percentage. It's not the 1 or 2% of the people who are dying, or maybe as much as 4 or 5% if you're looking at the whole population, although that's dropped somewhat, with better understanding that we can use steroids and things like that. So maybe it's down to 2 or 3%, but it's not that. We're talking, 80%. This was a study that was done at the University of California on a sports team. 80% of the people of the athletes who got this have permanent heart damage now. It's breathtaking. What's called morbidity as opposed to mortality, the sickness as opposed to death that's coming from this disease. And in many cases, people are getting it because their employers are forcing them into situations where they're exposed to it and refusing to provide them with the stuff that they need to avoid getting sick. And then, the flip side of that is companies who are inflicting this on their customers, who are not reorganizing or rearranging their stores, who aren't requiring their employees to wear masks so they don't expose their customers, or are not reorganizing the movement through stores, along in a particular kind of one-way route. So as a result, people are passing each other with a foot or so of clearance and spreading the virus from customer to customer. So all this is going on, and Mitch McConnell is saying, I'm not going to give any money to the average American. There's been the Democrats in the House and a few Republicans back in May passed legislation that would have given everybody $600 a week right until today. In fact, it extends into next year. And that would have funded state and local governments. Mitch McConnell is cutting off funds to police and fire departments. And this has been going on since May. The money is running out now. Well, the money ran out back, 3 months ago for unemployed people. And all the protections and eviction protections and it all ends at the end of this year, which is 2 weeks away, more or less. And what does McConnell want in exchange for allowing Americans to lift their heads a little bit above water and take a gasp of financial air? He wants an absolute and utter shield of liability for these corporations and their executives. And this is just the beginning, by the way, because once he gets this for COVID, all it'll take is a little tweak of the law to extend that to everything, which you know the Republicans are going to be pushing through the next time they have the ability. So why isn't this the top story in the media? In the corporate media? Could it be that those are the same corporations who would just assume they don't get sued by their employees? I mean, just let that sink in for a minute. It is absolutely time to raise hell, to call this out. Yeah, I get it that they're splitting now. Now he's tying the corporate liability to aid for state and local governments. So hey, you want your fire department to come if your house catches on fire? You want an ambulance to show up if you get really sick with COVID? Give us corporate liability protection. And end putting employers in jail. No more of that. No more holding companies responsible. No more workers and customers can sue. That's Mitch McConnell's price. This is psychotic. We need to be raising hell. There's another pile of news I have for you. I'll share with you right after the break, and then we'll pick up your phone calls. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Helping you win the water cooler wars. Well, maybe when we get back to water coolers, right? Stick around. And welcome back, John in Los Angeles. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Hello, I'm on unemployment. Had partially worked for a nonprofit, and so my unemployment is fairly low, the base unemployment. And I didn't qualify for the half ration thing that Trump put in a couple months ago. Therefore, yeah, I'm stretched out and angry. Hear about this McConnell retroactive and desire for his constituent as opposed to the American people, and it makes me angrier. I just want to find out what you think, since so much time has gone by, if we should just hope for a Biden administration to do a retroactive thing instead of wait for the Trump administration and McConnell to throw us bones. Now,
by the time that happens, you're going to have a couple of million small businesses gone forever. Every single one of those small businesses has a family or multiple families behind it who help put that business together, probably mortgage their homes to make it happen. They're going to be wiped out. You're going to have, I mean, we're looking, there's over 10 million people who are facing eviction on January 1st. And they will be evicted. Make no mistake about it. And you've got, people who've been living on credit cards. They're going to see an end to their ability to get credit. The credit card companies are going to start cutting people off. They're already jacking interest rates up to 30% in some cases. The damage has already been done to millions and millions of families, John, and it's just getting worse day by day by day. I don't think that saying, we'll wait another 3 weeks and Biden gets sworn in, and then, but you still have Republican control of the Senate.
Assuming we accept.
Go ahead.
Assuming we accept the bone that's thrown to us at this time to prevent, the any further damage, can not something else be done in the future that is retroactive? We've been facing this virus all along, and not just the corporations who want the retroactive liability protection. We need protection ourselves. The bottom line is democracy is humans, not corporations. They're not the bottom line.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And this is but again, the damage that has already been done by McConnell and Trump and the Republicans in the United States Senate is mind-boggling, John. I mean, look at the food lines whenever a food bank opens up, and literally, we've seen photos in some cities. Houston comes to mind recently, where the line to get food was over a mile long. And,
yes, but can something be done in the future to put this back under a Biden administration?
Well, yes, it is possible to give people large chunks of cash after the fact. But A, I think it's extremely unlikely that that's going to happen. And B, if you've already lost your home, you're not going to get it back. If you've already lost your business, you're not going to get it back. It's just, this is serious stuff. I get what you're saying, John. I totally get what you're saying. But we need to act now. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 20 minutes past the hour. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. Hey, we just put a new video up for supporters of our program over at ThomHartmann.com, and it's about what would have happened if back in 1941, when we were attacked by the Japanese at Pearl Harbor, what would have happened if Franklin Roosevelt had said, well, Hawaii didn't vote for me, and it's only 2,404 dead people. That's not so many, right? What's the big deal? Or what would have happened if my dad, who, joined the Army to go fight in World War II, if my dad had said, well, it's only 2,400 people, and I live in Michigan, and they're way over in Hawaii. They're never going to get to Michigan. That's the poison that is spreading in America right now, that we really need to take on. And so anyhow, that's the essence of this, the new video that we just put up. You can find it over at ThomHartmann.com, and I think you'll find it fascinating. Thank you for your support. Welcome back. So some of the stuff that's going on here, just apropos of what I was just saying about how dying, while it's an irreversible consequence, as are many of the consequences of getting COVID. A friend of mine recently was debating whether or not to travel, to fly somewhere. And my statement to him was, would you want to be the last guy to die in Vietnam? We are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 maybe months away from pretty much all of us being able to get a vaccine, which is hopefully going to put an end to this horrible pandemic. Now is no time to take chances. But here's this. This is, you ever hear of Creed Bailey? Creed Bailey is a guy, he was a political appointee, I believe. He was in charge of the White House Security Office, the head of the White House Security Office. And back in September, he got COVID. And Kayleigh McEnany and Donald Trump and Mike Pence and all the people at the White House, they basically put a lid on this. Don't tell anybody that our head of, this is the guy who coordinates with the Secret Service and organizes security for the White House itself. He works in the White House. Don't tell anybody that Creed Bailey has COVID, right? We're keeping this a secret. Well, it leaked out this week because his family or some friends of his family put up a GoFundMe page. Why did they put up a GoFundMe page? Because Creed was in the hospital for 2 months. He was in the ICU. They amputated his left toe and his right foot and the bottom half, and then that wasn't enough. They amputated the bottom half of his right leg to save him from dying from COVID. And now he's got no money. He's got no job. He's got to refit his house. I believe he has no job. He may still have a job. I'm not sure, but he's wiped out. He's got huge, you go in the hospital for a couple of months, with COVID or anything else. And almost regardless of the kind of insurance you have, there are just a zillion. This is the whole surprise billing thing, right? There's all kinds of ways that they figure out, that the hospitals figure out to stick it to you. He's got huge medical expenses. Plus, he's going to have to retrofit his house because he's now, a one-legged guy. He's got a disability. He's going to need he's going to need rails to hang on to when he walks. He's going to need prosthetics. He's going to need, it's just like they're wiped out by getting sick. The head of White House security. And the Trump White House was like, hey, keep a lid on it. Don't tell anybody. Meanwhile, Australia and New Zealand have come up with a deal. Both of them have COVID under control. There's a small outbreak in Australia going on right now in Victoria, but outside of that, country's in good shape. In New Zealand, life is back to normal. They're having rugby tournaments and soccer matches, and, life is normal in New Zealand. New Zealand has had a total of 25 people die since the beginning. And Australia has had a total of 900 people die, 908. And so Australia and New Zealand are saying, hey, let's be a bubble. Let's allow flights between our two countries with no quarantine. You don't have to, do any kind of song and dance. You can just fly back and forth. Because both countries have basically cut themselves off from the outside world. Meanwhile, here in the United States, we're losing a 9/11's worth of people every single day. Because Donald Trump and Jared Kushner and Mike Pence decided that doing something to stop the spread of the COVID virus would not be politically advantageous to them, because the COVID virus was mostly killing people of color, and it was mostly happening in blue states. That's what they decided back in March, when they brought to a screeching halt the post office's plans to send out 5 masks to every family in America, to every family in America, to every household in America. They brought to a screeching halt the plan to organize a nationwide contact testing and contact tracing program. They brought to a screeching halt basically everything, and started listening, to Scott Atlas, the chiropractor, X-ray. He's an MD. But his specialty is X-rays and MRIs. He's never ever worked in the field of infectious disease outside of just being a regular MD. But he's not even a regular MD. He's not a general practitioner. He doesn't see patients like that. He looks at MRIs. That's what he does. That's his specialty. But he was on Fox News saying, hey, we should just do herd immunity. Let everybody get it, then everybody will be immune. Won't that be great? Somebody tell Creed Bailey, the guy who ran White House security, right? But that's where we've been, and that's why we have 300,000 dead Americans. A little blood on his hands? Donald Trump? We'll be back. It's 27 minutes past the hour. Stick around. It's coming up on 28 past the hour. I want to share with you a novelist's view of some of these people, and then I'll pick up your phone calls after the break. Stick around. This is going to be good.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Defending America from the weapons of mass deception. Thom Hartmann with you. Stick around. We are behind, and we only have 4 days to go, including today. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. Pitch in, help out, tag you're it. This is a very difficult time. It's been a tough year, right? I mean, it's been a tough 4 years for all of us, obviously. But for fundraising for nonprofits, particularly nonprofits in the political arena like Free Speech TV, it has been a particularly difficult year because it's an election year, a presidential election year, where literally the fate and future of democracy in the United States was on the line. So a lot of people have just been, throwing their money at politicians or tossing their money, or I didn't mean that, negatively. And there's not a lot left over in many cases for groups like Free Speech TV. And that's why it's so important that if you can make a contribution to Free Speech TV today, if you can sign up and say, yes, I would love to be a regular contributor, count me in. I will, I'll be here for you. Take $30 a month out of my credit card every month, and until I tell you to stop. If you can do something like that, it will mean a lot. It'll mean a lot more than it does in any normal year. It'll mean a lot more than it has in previous years. This has been a tough year. And it's been a particularly tough year for Free Speech TV. And we really need to make this goal. And if we do hit our goal, then we unlock that $10,000 from Andrew, and I believe it's Andrew in San Diego. But we need your help. We need you to make that possible, to make that happen. And that will just kind of push us over the very top, or get us, well, actually, we've got to hit the very top in order to unlock that $10,000 pledge or match. We're still about $80,000 short. It's not an enormous amount of money, but it requires a lot of small gifts. And that's, small gifts are mostly what we get and are much appreciated. They're the foundation of Free Speech TV. So with a regular recurring donations, which are the very best because Free Speech TV can budget, they can plan the next year, they know what's coming in. With regular recurring donations, all of them, you don't even have to ask, you will automatically get this really cool calendar that goes on your refrigerator with magnets and has some great stuff on it. I think you'll really like it. And with one-time gifts, there's a whole selection of premiums that Free Speech TV is offering. With a $20 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Fight for Democracy, the Free Speech TV Fight for Democracy bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV webcam cover, or the Change Never Happens from the Top Down tote bag, channeling Margaret Mead's famous quote. With a $75 gift, you can get the Thom Hartmann Program mug, or the Free Speech TV camera cover. Or the Free Speech TV black hat. I got that wrong. The camera cover comes with a $50 gift. With a $100 gift, you can have your choice of a set of 2 Free Speech TV face masks, or the sure-to-be collector's item Quarantine 2020 Free Speech TV tumbler. With a $120 gift, you get your choice of the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or the Free Speech TV social distancing kit. With a $120 gift, you get your choice of my book on the hidden history of monopolies, which explains why every American family today is paying $5,000 a year more than we have to for everything from cable and cell phone service to airplane rides and hotel, all because of monopolies. We pay a $5,000, essentially a monopoly tax. We're being ripped off by giant corporations. And I lay it out in this book, how it's happening, why it's happening, where it came from, when it started, and what we can do about it. I think it's a really important book. And, of course, autographed by the author. That's with a $120 gift. Or The Hidden History of American Oligarchy, which won't be out until the spring, but you'll be one of the very first people to get it. And it's about the rise of this, failure of democracy and how we might go, and the stark choices that we face in a post-Trump world. With a $240 gift, you can join us for our virtual meet and greet, where we hang out and talk kind of offline, although it's online, it's on Zoom, but you know what I mean, it's not public. Or the Free Speech TV hoodie, or both the Oligarchy book and the Monopoly book. And with a $360 gift, there is the Thom Hartmann University winter box. That's The Hidden History of Oligarchy, The Hidden History of Monopolies, a set of 2 Free Speech TV face masks, and the soon-to-be collector's item Quarantine 2020 Free Speech TV tumbler. And with a $1,000 gift, get in line to come to Portland. And once this is all over and we have achieved herd immunity through vaccinations, and we're all feeling safe to get on airplanes again, or whatever it may be, we're going to have some real special reunions and get-togethers, and I look forward to seeing you. That's with a $1,000 gift. But in addition to any of these one-time gifts, you can also say, oh, and by the way, after you send me that tumbler or that book, also, would you sign me up for $5 a month? I mean, even a small amount, $5 a month, $10 a month, $15 a month, whatever it may be. and help Free Speech TV have some stability, some foundation. Please call now. Thank you so much. On this week's Science Revolution, Vien Trong with Tom Steyer's Climate Justice joins the show with a vision for a green, red, and blue climate New Deal. That vision includes Native Americans, a blue New Deal for our threatened oceans, and a green New Deal for our coastal communities. Dr. Michael Greger joins us. Have you gained a few COVID pounds? In his new How Not to Diet cookbook, Dr. Greger tells how you can eat your way to a healthy, sustainable weight with plant-based meals. Terry Mills, president of the National Nursing Network, drops by on why a national nurse for public health is important. Plus, Laura Packard, the founder of Healthcare Voices, explains open enrollment under the ACA to help the 16+ million uninsured Americans get themselves enrolled. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Welcome back. So this morning on Twitter, I caught this thread. Hari Kunzru, I believe it is a novelist, a brilliant novelist, and only a true, absolutely astonishingly brilliant wordsmith could have come up with this. And I just want to do a little bit, and what Hari did was create a Twitter thread, a long Twitter thread, speaking to the outgoing administration. And I just wanted to share pieces of it. Mike Pence, you repressed, joyless, would-be witch finder. Every time you spoke, you always looked like you were straining to expel an enormous bolus of your own hypocrisy from your clenched sphincter. Betsy DeVos, you blandly foolish, soulless, entitled, child-stealing witch rotting like a corpse inside your Chanel suit. All the generals, you spineless, buzz-cut, phallus-brained plastic Spartans fawning and wriggling to distract yourself from your moral cowardice. Kayleigh McEnany, you evacuated husk of a mean girl cheerleader, the cavity where your heart once was, pumped full of spite and moronic lies. Bill Barr, you pompous, pus-filled bladder of casuistry, you are an enemy of justice, bloated with resentment and cruelty, wobbling like a jelly at the feet of the oligarchs. Jared Kushner, you vacuous, dainty, preening, overprompted nub of mediocrity, squeezed like an entitled smear of toothpaste into your silk suit, bought with tear-stained dollars wrung out of your suffering tenants in your slum apartments. Ivanka Trump, you monstrous slug of vanity, you infantile ninny, so marinated in self-regard that in your pea brain you believe we ought to love you for your crimes. Mike Pompeo, you bubble, you booby, you flatulent zero that rolling in your ample guts that you mistake for world-shaking significance is just the acid reflux of your irrelevancy. Don Jr., you scabrous, single-nostrilled, unloved, elephant-murdering human wreckage, vibrating with bitterness and impotent rage at all the opportunities you've squandered. Sarah Sanders, you crude, hulking, beetle-browed bully, working your multiple chins as you masticated another stinking quid of falsity, spitting again and again on the people you were supposed to inform. All you staffers and interns so eager to crunch your way in your shiny new work shoes over the bodies of the poor and powerless, I smite you and cast you out one by one. Eric Trump, you pallid, clammy, suppurating, nocturnal, semi-human grub. Your absence of charisma is your only notable trait, and the act of flushing you from memory will be so smooth and painless that in a month people will find it hard to picture your moon face. Rudy Giuliani, you capering, cartoonish, skull-faced bag of graft and corruption, too stupid even to ask who's pulling your strings, just so long as you can cake your crusty face in TV makeup and clack your jaw to camera. And, of course, Stephen Miller, you weeping pustule upon the social body, you dreg, you homunculus, you noxious slime felched from the gaping cavity of Jim Crow. One day may you find yourself walking barefoot across hot sand, desperate for water, crying for your missing child. And then Hari ends, with that I'll rest a while and go find a street corner to dance on. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay, let's pick up your phone calls here. Shelby in Tallahassee, Florida. Hey, Shelby, what's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Tom, and that's how I like it. I like it just like you just read it. That's what we need to be doing, is to be calling out these marinated rats who have decided that they have no humanity, and to think that we now here 3 weeks from Christmas, and no one is concerned that we are here having people to perish. They're getting on here telling us now about this, I called about this bill that they claim that Joe Manchin from West Virginia is something about the size of this sinking here with contributions, and they have allowed them to be polluted by the corporate liability crowd that they seem to be holding up a check, but they're giving defense contractors in this bill the right to pay 40 hours of their paid leave, but somehow we can't give paid leave to workers who have been thrown out because of a pandemic and their incompetence, Tom. I don't know what has happened to this country, and I think that we're not. What is the name of that article? Who wrote that? Was Harry? Who wrote that?
It was a Twitter thread, and I retweeted it about an hour ago. So you can just look at my Twitter feed and see it.
I remember, back in the early 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th century Scotland, where the Highlanders were fighting with the Stuart and King James with this battle, and they would create these pamphlets with my study of anthropology, right? That is the kind of conversation that we need to be having, and the Democrats need to. We passed a HEROES bill that is being basically for 8 months, 6 months has been basically talked down as if that was nothing, and now they're talking up a bill that is completely insufficient for the scale of this crisis, as somehow that's a cake that we're supposed to bargain out. State and local government, nothing. Defense contractors, corporate liability, that John Conan and McConnell, because he has separated this bill, and Joe Manchin has gone along with this. Joe Manchin. Now, I like Joe Manchin. I like Joe Manchin in the context of when he was the governor. He is from a rural state with a disposition that does not follow my disposition, because I'm from progressive state, right? But I understand the fine line that has to be walked with that man. But for him to now, for his state are people who need that $1,200 check, I just hope that Joe Biden does not come up there with this milquetoast kind of unity talk all the time and try to somehow. Mitch McConnell got on the floor this morning and told the country that Trump had done all these great things, and they had that. I see that now the deficit hawk has come out. They had that Mitt Romney on CBS with Gayle King, and she was up there flowering and laughing with him about his going to go down in history as the only one stood up to Trump. This Mitch McConnell, the corporate Bane man. I mean, it's like water has turned into glue.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, Shelby, that you didn't know where this started. I can tell you where this started. This started back in 1971 with the Lewis Powell's writing his memo to organize the billionaires and the big corporations and say, we need to get politically active. Then in 1976, the Supreme Court saying it's okay for billionaires to own politicians. And that led right to Ronald Reagan in 1980. And ever since 1980, and Shelby, thank you for the call. You said it so well. Ever since 1980, what's been going on is that the billionaires and the big corporations have been running the show. We have been in a Reaganism, neoliberal, I'm not a big fan of $5 words, but a trickle-down world Neither of our two Democratic presidents were successful in reversing that. I'm not sure Clinton was even inclined to. Obama talked about reversing it. He had a Senate on his side for 74 business days out of 8 years. So even if he was inclined to do it, he couldn't. And, and I think, your point, Shelby, that if Joe Biden doesn't start doing something consequential and big and serious, I think there's going to be hell to pay. I don't think the American people are going to put up with another Democratic president who says, hey, maybe we should, cut Social Security just a little bit. And let's perpetuate corporate personhood. And, the best thing we can do for health care for everybody is throw a lot more money at the big health insurance corporations and stuff like that. I mean, it's just, we're not buying this crap anymore. America's not buying this crap anymore. And I know that Kamala Harris knows this. I know that. I mean, it was so obvious in the presidential debates, in her campaign. Yeah, she calibrated her positions from time to time in order not to lose the primary, let's say. But she gets it. And the people around her get it. She's got some really solid progressives around her. And we're just gonna have to see. But I'm holding those conversations about the Biden administration in abeyance until after he's president. Because right now, we still have a crisis. We still have a strongman in the White House who wants to destroy our democracy and is still working at it.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's 45 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, exposing the con in conservative. And welcome back. Tony in Long Beach, California. Hey, Tony, what's up?
Good morning. For 4 years, you've been referring to Donald Trump as mentally ill. As a liberal, I take exception to that. I believe calling him mentally ill does a disservice to liberalism. And the reason
it does a disservice to the mentally ill. But the fact of the matter is that more than half of our prison population is mentally ill. That psychopathy is... Sure, you may.
If I may. You've interviewed a number of psychiatrists, Justin, Frank, etc. I wish you had asked one of them, what is mental illness? You've got a DSM in the 5th edition listing hundreds, if not thousands, of mental illnesses. Have you ever read, I've sent it to you many times, by the way, have you ever read the definition of mental illness?
Tony, what's your point?
The American Psychiatric Association has a formal definition of mental illness. I've shown it to psychologists, neurologists, pathologists.
Tony, what's your point?
The point is, liberals, by calling a man mentally ill when there is no such thing, is acting...
Thank you, Tony. I'm not going to go down that road. Patrick in Long Island. Hey, Patrick, what's on? By the way, for the record, Donald Trump is both mentally ill and a criminal. Patrick, what's on your mind?
Yeah, well, Tom, ironically, I said to somebody just a few hours ago, I said, well, Trump is mentally ill. What's the excuse for the rest of the Republicans?
Yeah. I think if you're looking at sociopathy, it's widespread in the Republican Party.
Correct, as it is in the corporate world. And this is just a fact of life. And Reaganism, trickle down, go for the gold, be greedy is the mantra for the day. I foresee far-ending consequences for the failure of Mitch McConnell. I'm going to lay it at his foot, of his failure to allow anything approaching reasonable assistance, reasonable backup emergencies, reasonable social nets. We are going to be in such a jam when we wind up with homeless people by the scores because the rent forgiveness ran out. We are going to wind up with loans not paid. We are going to wind up with houses foreclosed. We are going to wind up with a whole lot of stuff when it seems like everybody else in the civilized world found no problem with reimbursing employees to the tune of 75% and giving roughly $1,500, maybe
more.
$2,000, to their citizenry. We have been done the worst disservice probably since slavery that this country has done. We have been left to fend for ourselves in the time of a national crisis, to incur loss. Not only is the loss of life indescribable and extremely painful, but the work and sweat and effort that goes into building a small business, it's very difficult to bounce back from that when that is collapsed. You've got hopes and dreams, you've got financial futures in jeopardy, and there's Mitch McConnell. Nobody challenged him. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, I'm with you. Thank you, Patrick. Very, very, very well said. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. And just a reminder, we've got some really fascinating, in the next hour, a fascinating conversation about strongman government. The Hidden History of Monopoly tells how Robert Bork, that guy from the Reagan era, transformed corporate America and destroyed the American dream. Hey, we have a new video for supporters of our program over at thomhartmann.com. It's about curing type 1 diabetes, which is a pretty amazing thing. Type 1 diabetes is where the cells in the pancreas that produce insulin are actually destroyed. They're gone. Type 1 diabetics, typically it shows up in childhood. And without insulin, people die from it fairly young. With insulin, they can live a good long life. But a University of Alberta researcher, Dr. James Shapiro, back in 1990, pioneered a transplant system. Now, the problem with that was that people had to use immunosuppressive drugs for the rest of their lives because they had just gotten, a partial pancreas transplant from another person. But now he's successfully, on mice, worked out a way of actually curing type 1 diabetes. We can't do it legally here in the United States, but they're doing it in Canada. It's amazing. You can check it out at thomhartmann.com. Oh, welcome back. Mike in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind today?
Oh, Tom, homunculus.
Yeah, wasn't that just rich, and that language was just so rich.
The cool thing about it is if that were playing on the television in the White House, Trump would turn around and go, "Hey, they're speaking Slovenian."
Yeah, perhaps.
So the thing is you notice with his shorter vocabulary, he managed to come up with something. Now, it was that he said herd mentality. Remember that?
Yeah, because he got halfway into saying herd immunity and realized I shouldn't say immunity, so he made it mentality.
Look up herd mentality, everybody. It's a real thing. It actually comes back from the 1800s, and Freud wrote a lot about this. He wasn't the first to come up with it, but it was around that time. Now, related to Freud is Ed Bernays. And Ed Bernays was the fellow who came up with the posters to get us into World War I. And it was his idea.
He was hired by Woodrow Wilson. He was Sigmund Freud's nephew, as I recall.
Right, and torches of freedom to get to.
In fact, he invented public relations.
Sales.
He invented the phrase PR.
Yeah, right, exactly. The whole field, in fact, it's an industry. So where I'm going with this is that if you know what that's out of all those, homunculus or herd immunity, it makes sense to him. It's something he's probably known a very long time about because he's the world's most fabulous salesman, greater than anybody's ever seen. And really make sense. Now, when I listen to all of the AM talk radio, what I hear almost entirely on those shows is a segment, at least several, if not a part of the show, if not the whole show, talking about going in the exact opposite direction about this disease and how dangerous it is and how careful you have to be. In other words, it's all a plot by us to control them and invite socialism. So,
right.
There's your liability. Every time I hear it, I think, how irresponsible.
So you're thinking that media that carries this right-wing message is worried about their corporate liability too, and that's why they're not talking about Mitch McConnell holding us hostage. That makes perfect sense for Fox News and the big networks that own the radio stations that run right-wing hate radio.
How many dots can you link directly to the broadcasts, literally streaming, coming out of these things into our electromagnetic?
I think it's a substantial portion. Mike, brilliant observation. Thank you so much for that. Robert in Long Beach, California. Hey, Robert, what's up?
Yeah, I was wondering what it takes to get the court at Hague interested in Trump and his bunch and McConnell and his bunch for crimes against humanity, which obviously they've been investing in for quite some time, and if charges can be brought at the court of The Hague, and felonious and misdemeanor charges, and warrants, international warrants put out for these people, so when they do travel, they can be picked up by Interpol, the international police, taken to the court of The Hague and answer for these charges, because the things that they do and have done infect the whole world, especially the president. Travel from the United States to other parts of the world is going to be a problem. Other countries don't want the covert virus coming over there because the United States is lacking because of Trump. So I was wondering what you think about how the court of The Hague operates and what does it take to get them interested. And that's about it.
We had Michael Ratner on this program. He's passed away now, Ellen's brother, actually, who ran an organization that defended the human rights of people. In fact, he got the Supreme Court, the Hamdan decision. He argued that before the Supreme Court and brought that case, 3 of the Guantanamo cases, in fact. And he tried to get Don Rumsfeld. This was back during the Bush administration. He tried to get Don Rumsfeld arrested in Germany, missed by 1 day, but the goal was to hold him for trial in The Hague. And the Trump, if I'm recalling this correctly, and I may be wrong on this, Robert, it's worth fact checking me, but my recollection is that the Bush administration pulled us out of the international treaty that created that court in The Hague, the Court for International Justice, I think it's called, and therefore we're not subject to its oversight. So they could convene, they could hold a trial, they could do anything they wanted, but it's not, they're not going to be able to extradite anybody from the United States for it. So I just don't think that's, sadly, I don't think that's going to be an option. I do think, though, that there needs to be accountability, and beyond just an election. And Robert, I'm with you. I think that Donald Trump, I think Stephen Miller, just for tearing children from their parents and then hiding the contact information for over a year from people who are trying to reunite them, should be tried for crimes against humanity.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. X-Chair, changing the world one seat at a time. More information at xchairtom.com. Bloomsy Box, simply better blooms. More info available at bloomsybox.com, code TOM. And Bowl and Branch Sheets, crafted for the common good. More info at bowlandbranch.com, code TOM.
We are behind, and we only have 4 days to go, including today. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. Pitch in, help out, tag you're it. This is a very difficult time. It's been a tough year, right? I mean, it's been a tough 4 years for all of us, obviously. But for fundraising for nonprofits, particularly nonprofits in the political arena like Free Speech TV, it has been a particularly difficult year because it's an election year, a presidential election year, where literally the fate and future of democracy in the United States was on the line. So a lot of people have just been, throwing their money at politicians or tossing their money, or I didn't mean that, negatively. And there's not a lot left over in many cases for groups like Free Speech TV. And that's why it's so important that if you can make a contribution to Free Speech TV today, if you can sign up and say, yes, I would love to be a regular contributor, count me in. I will, I'll be here for you. Take $30 a month out of my credit card every month, and until I tell you to stop. If you can do something like that, it will mean a lot. It'll mean a lot more than it does in any normal year. It'll mean a lot more than it has in previous years. This has been a tough year. And it's been a particularly tough year for Free Speech TV. And we really need to make this goal. And if we do hit our goal, then we unlock that $10,000 from Andrew, and I believe it's Andrew in San Diego. But we need your help. We need you to make that possible, to make that happen. And that will just kind of push us over the very top, or get us, well, actually, we've got to hit the very top in order to unlock that $10,000 pledge or match. We're still about $80,000 short. It's not an enormous amount of money, but it requires a lot of small gifts. And that's, small gifts are mostly what we get and are much appreciated. They're the foundation of Free Speech TV. So with a regular recurring donations, which are the very best because Free Speech TV can budget, they can plan the next year, they know what's coming in. With regular recurring donations, all of them, you don't even have to ask, you will automatically get this really cool calendar that goes on your refrigerator with magnets, and has some great stuff on it. I think you'll really like it. And with one-time gifts, there's a whole selection of premiums that Free Speech TV is offering. With a $20 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Fight for Democracy, the Free Speech TV Fight for Democracy bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV webcam cover, or the Change Never Happens from the Top Down tote bag, channeling Margaret Mead's famous quote. With a $75 gift, you can get the Thom Hartmann Program mug, or the Free Speech TV camera cover. Or the Free Speech TV black hat. I got that wrong. The camera cover comes with a $50 gift. With a $100 gift, you can have your choice of a set of 2 Free Speech TV face masks, or the sure-to-be collector's item Quarantine 2020 Free Speech TV tumbler. With a $120 gift, you get your choice of the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or the Free Speech TV social distancing kit. With a $120 gift, you get your choice of my book on the hidden history of monopolies, which explains why every American family today is paying $5,000 a year more than we have to for everything from cable and cell phone service to airplane rides and hotel, all because of monopolies. We pay a $5,000, essentially a monopoly tax. We're being ripped off by giant corporations. And I lay it out in this book, how it's happening, why it's happening, where it came from, when it started, and what we can do about it. I think it's a really important book. And, of course, autographed by the author. That's with a $120 gift. Or The Hidden History of American Oligarchy, which won't be out until the spring, but you'll be one of the very first people to get it. And it's about the rise of this, failure of democracy and how we might go and the stark choices that we face in a post-Trump world. With a $240 gift, you can join us for our virtual meet and greet where we hang out and talk kind of offline, although it's online, it's on Zoom, but you know what I mean, it's not public. Or the Free Speech TV hoodie, or both the Oligarchy book and the Monopoly book. And with a $360 gift, there is the Thom Hartmann University Winter Box. That's The Hidden History of Oligarchy, The Hidden History of Monopolies, a set of 2 Free Speech TV face masks, and the soon-to-be collector's item, Quarantine 2020 Free Speech TV tumbler. And with a $1,000 gift, get in line to come to Portland. And, once this is all over and we have achieved herd immunity through vaccinations, and we're all feeling safe to get on airplanes again or whatever it may be, we're going to have some real special reunions and get-togethers, and I look forward to seeing you. That's with a $1,000 gift. But in addition to any of these one-time gifts, you can also say, oh, and by the way, after you send me that tumbler or that book, also, would you sign me up for $5 a month? I mean, even a small amount, $5 a month, $10 a month, $15 a month, whatever it may be. And help Free Speech TV have some stability, some foundation. Please call now. Thank you so much.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So let's take a deep dive into authoritarianism as a form of government and as a form of governance. On the line with us is Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat. Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat is a professor of history and Italian studies at New York University, a historian and cultural critic, a scholar on fascism and authoritarian leaders, and the author of 7 books, including her latest, Strongmen, From Mussolini to the Present. Both her website and her Twitter handle are her name, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, BENGHIAT.com for her website, and put an ad at the beginning of that for her Twitter handle. Ruth, welcome, Professor Ben-Ghiat, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to start with just kind of a definition of terms. I think most people have some understanding of what democracy is and what a kingdom is, for example, like Saudi Arabia, an absolute monarchy. But between absolute monarchy on the one hand, or even absolute despotism, and democracy on the other hand, being the polar ends, and please correct me if you think those are not the polar ends, there's this weird little hybrid of strongman authoritarian leadership in countries that started out as representative democratic republics. How do we define this? What is this spectrum like? What are these kinds of government that we saw with Mussolini, for example, during World War II?
So authoritarianism, at its most broad, is a system of governance where the executive branch comes to overwhelm and politicize and sometimes suppress the workings of a free judiciary, a free press, courts, and all the other institutions of society. So authoritarian governments, in the 20th century, we had, the one-party dictatorships. Today, you have authoritarians who come in through elections, and then they try to manipulate elections to stay there. So today it's more of a continuum. Sometimes there are democratic institutions left with a little bit of, independence. But basically that's authoritarianism, is when the executive and the person of the leader, you have personality cults often, comes to overwhelm the rest of society. And for strongmen, go ahead.
No, please finish. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to define the strongman leader. It's partly ironic because, as we see in the book I wrote and in many things unfolding in our world, sometimes these male leaders who are authoritarians who also use masculinity as a way to present themselves to their people and in their relations with foreign leaders. Think of Putin, who strips his shirt off and poses as the symbol of strength, right? But this is also ironic because some of them are the most weak and brittle and insecure leaders who are highly destructive.
Well, couldn't you argue that might be what drives them to be strongmen, that they can't, they can't deal with the loss of losing an election, they can't deal with the loss of control? I mean, the whole control freak thing usually comes out of a deep-seated sense of insecurity without, asking you to become a psychologist. Isn't that a piece of it?
Yes, and one of the things, so The Strongmen is the first book to put Trump in historical perspective. And I start with Mussolini and Hitler, and there's three ages. There's the fascist age, the age of military coups, so I read for years about coups, and then what I call new authoritarians, the people like Putin and Orban and Bolsonaro and Trump. And so, each age works in a different way, but some of the similarities I found were remarkable in personality. So all of them are, they construct these systems of governance, which I call cocoons or inner sanctums, because they can't stand to have any critical feedback. They need flatterers and sycophants around them. So they construct these areas of government. They often have family members like sons-in-law. There's a whole paragraph about the role of sons-in-law. And this is not a good thing for them in the end, because it leads them to make bad decisions. And in the end, they're very bad leaders because they're not getting critical, feedback. And this is all because they have these personalities where they have a kind of manic need to control everything and everyone, and even the version of reality, right? It has to be theirs. So the slogan, Mussolini provided the template for a lot of this, and his slogan was, Mussolini is always right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, in Germany, wasn't it ein Volk, ein Führer? One people, one nation, one Führer, one leader.
And there you had, even with respect to fascist Italy, Nazi Germany kind of perfected this, where it was an even more centralized system of government. There was no king, and Mussolini had the king, and he also had the Pope. A very unusual circumstance to have Vatican City inside another foreign country inside your country. But in Hitler's case, it was so extreme that his will became the law. So the law of the land was equal to the Führer's will. So that's a degree of power and control that was unmatched except in Stalinist Russia at the time.
Well, and in that context, whether you're defining it as fascist or as authoritarian, doesn't Soviet communism fall into that category as well? I mean, isn't that what Stalin was famously paranoid and continuously frightened of everybody. It's one of the reasons he executed so many of his own people.
Yeah, and a lot of the dynamics were also provided by communism, starting with personality cults. Stalin and Mussolini had the two kind of initial personality cults. And in my book, I'm a historian of fascism for many years, and so I chose to focus on mostly right-wing authoritarians and show the lineage from the fascists to Pinochet in Chile and Franco in Spain. But I talk about communists, throughout, because there were a lot of interchanges, like Ceausescu in Romania influenced Mobutu in the Congo, and Mobutu was a right-wing authoritarian. So we can't, I chose to have this one lineage because otherwise it becomes an encyclopedia. But the left and the right have done many of the same things in their pursuit of authoritarianism.
Right. And in that context, I have always thought of Soviet Russia, certainly post-Lenin Soviet Russia, as an authoritarian state, as essentially a variation on a fascist state, although the old fascist definition of the merger of corporate and state interests that Mussolini was fond of kind of blows that up. Where do the we're just a minute out from a break, by the way. Where do the bully boys in the streets with their beating people up, whether it's the beer halls in Munich in the 30s or in the 20s, actually, late 20s, or whether it's what we saw in Washington D.C. this weekend, where do they fit in this scheme?
Yeah, every authoritarian needs a regular army, at least the regular armed forces, but they also need various forms of paramilitaries. Mussolini was the first with squadrists, and then he institutionalized them and made them the militia. But when people are trying to gain power, and even as we see and consolidate their power, they usually appeal to and energize these kind of loose militia groupings and far-right groups. And this has happened over and over in history. And this is what Trump did from the very beginning. One of my very first op-eds about Trump for CNN was inspired by him retweeting neo-Nazi propaganda.
Wow. We're speaking with Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat. She's going to be with us for the hour, doing a deep dive into authoritarianism, fascism, this whole spectrum of right-wingism that we have just had a very, very close encounter with. Well, we still are, and we will be digging into that as well. So please stick around. Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat is with us. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Her website, RuthBenghiat.com, and Ruth Ben-Ghiat is also her Twitter handle. We'll be right back. So, Ruth, when Madison and his buddies were putting together the Constitution, one of the things that they had seen repeatedly throughout European history was military coups, militaries overthrowing governments, whether they were kingdoms or fledgling democratic attempts. And it's one of the reasons why they made sure that the commander-in-chief of the military was a civilian. And it's also the reason that I think it was in the 1930s, might have been a little later than that, it might have been post-World War II, you perhaps know, that we actually put into law that the head of the Department of Defense has to be a civilian or at least 10 years out from the military. They dropped that down to 7 years out, I think, in the 50s. Is it our civilian control of the military that saved us from the military, or the traditions within our military that saved us from Donald Trump using the military against us, expanding what he did in Washington, D.C., nationwide, or what he did here in Portland, Oregon, for that matter? Or was the military made more vulnerable by the fact that he was able to install his toadies in its leadership, and now he's decapitated much of the senior leadership of the Defense Department and installed toadies, and everybody's a little nervous about where that's going to go? Please speak to all that.
Yeah, that at the time in the summer, I saw, because I've been tracking the military-Trump relationship for some time because I worked on military coups, and I saw what was going on with Barr energizing also with law enforcement, but using the military as props and having the, troops come in and warehouse outside the Capitol. I thought that all of that would be a rehearsal for election time. And other things. The Department of Defense, at one point in 2019, tweeted to civilians, could they identify unused urban tunnels? And I immediately thought, counterinsurgency, counterinsurgency warfare. And what I see Trump is, from my perspective of studying authoritarians, is he was really trying to bring the war against, insurgents home. And he as we saw in Portland and other places, he started identifying protesters, civil rights, organizers, dissenters, as domestic terrorists, and starting to make them political enemies. And this is one of the main things when we think about the legacy of the Trump era. He's not gone yet, but he to the old enemies, the racial enemies of African Americans and Muslims, he added new enemies. And this, there are precedents, the Cold War and other times in American history. But being someone who didn't agree with them made you now a political enemy. Being a protester made you a political enemy. So I saw this in a very dim light. And what was so interesting is you saw the limits of what would be tolerated in America, because he overplayed his hand in Lafayette Square, and he pissed off, General Milley by making him a prop. And so this came back to haunt him. Yeah, because what was really terrifying about recent events is that he was, of course, trying the electoral maneuvers, but he also was exploring military options.
Yeah, this is chilling stuff. We'll be right back with more of our conversation with Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat, her latest book, Strongmen, From Mussolini to the Present. Get thee a copy. We'll be right back. Stick around. On this week's Science Revolution, Viet Trong with Tom Steyer's Climate Justice joins the show with a vision for a green, red, and blue climate New Deal. That vision includes Native Americans, a blue New Deal for our threatened oceans, and a green New Deal for our coastal communities. Dr. Michael Greger joins us. Have you gained a few COVID pounds? In his new How Not to Diet cookbook, Dr. Greger tells how you can eat your way to a healthy, sustainable weight with plant-based meals. Terry Mills, president of the National Nursing Network, drops by on why a national nurse for public health is important. Plus, Laura Packard, the founder of Healthcare Voices, explains open enrollment under the ACA to help the 16+ million uninsured Americans get themselves enrolled. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Welcome back. We're speaking with Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who is the author of 7 books, most recently Strongmen, From Mussolini to the Present. Professor, we were just talking during the break about how Lafayette Square was basically Trump. I think Trump and Bill Barr thought of it as a dress rehearsal for what they might do during the elections. And, what blew that up was General Milley apologizing and the military going, whoa, and the helicopters and everything, everybody recalibrating their understanding of what's going on. How close do you think we were to a military coup, or the possibility that Trump would attempt to lead a military coup, a la Erdogan or somebody like that, or El-Sisi?
I think, he clearly was exploring the military option, because this is why out of the blue, quote unquote, General Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, came and said, made a declaration that the military, the armed forces would obey the Constitution and not, quote, an individual. And this is clearly Trump. So the fact that he said this means that this option was being explored and had been set up indeed. Was explored on the ground. Remember all the unmarked, also not only the regular military, but these other kinds of police that the public learned about for the first time. And he's been waging psychological warfare for a very long time on Americans. And the people around him and him, they know how to do this. They've been doing this for decades. But that whole display, this political theater of kind of aggression that we saw in the summer with these troops assembled that nobody knew quite who they were. This is classic psychological warfare. And so then it was supposed to lead to, exploring the use of actual troops during the election. And of course, had there been huge protests during the election, they were poised to know how to put them down. I also want to mention on the theme of political enemies that one thing that was new from the summer was the assault and detention of hundreds of journalists. I wrote an op-ed for CNN called How Journalists Become Hate Objects. And this had been set up, of course, by Trump demonizing the press for years. But this is also part of it, because you can't be neutral for authoritarians. You're either with them or you're against them. So the idea of journalists who are there as observers to cover and, report on it, it doesn't work for people like Donald Trump.
And thus, he had the police attacking journalists as well. Well, I struggle to understand the rationale for this. The rationale for kingdoms historically has been continuity, stability, some sort of either genetic superiority or, a blessing from God. But there was at least a rationalization. There was a structure there. I mean, we still have kingdoms. The United Kingdom is still a kingdom. The rationale for Calvinism, in other words, oligarchy, rich people basically ruling everything. John Calvin's idea that, we're all born sinful and we have to figure out how God is telling us who are the good ones among us. Oh, it must be the ones that he's blessed with riches. They should be running the show. We all are familiar with the rationalizations or rationales or reasons for, a representative, constitutionally limited democratic republic, for what we call democracy or our Republican form of government. But outside of, it got snatched from us and now he's got it and he's in charge, is there a structural rationalization for strongman government?
Well, yeah, it's changed over the century. And so I really wanted, as a historian, I wanted to really differentiate what happens in the fascist era and military coups in today. So in the fascist era, there's some of the same things. I identify these tools of rule, which is propaganda, corruption, very important, violence, and machismo, and the myth of national greatness. But it always ended in the fascist years with territorial expansion. So that becomes, having an empire becomes a big justification, right? In our day, there's not as much of that, although Putin is engaging in it. But having power for power's sake and turning the public office into a vehicle of private enrichment, so you have kleptocracy, like in Putin's Russia, that's very important. And that's exactly what Donald Trump did. And I really see Trump, he was never there to govern as a democratic small d president. He's totally different than anybody else, and he conforms to the authoritarian playbook. So his goals were never public welfare. He couldn't care less. He doesn't, I've been saying this since March, he doesn't care if Americans live or die. It's just of no interest to him. He truly matches the very dim and bleak authoritarian mentality that way. His goals were, number one, to make money for Trump Organization. And that's why he's been golfing 1 out of every 3 days. He visits Trump properties. When people say he's so lazy, he's incompetent, it's that his goals have been different. He's worked really hard at that. He's worked really hard at propaganda, tweeting over 100 times in one day, building up his personality cult because you have to keep people loyal to you, right? And then you have that structure of government we talked about before where only loyalists can be around you, and spreading hatred so that Americans will be polarized.
Remarkable stuff. We're talking with Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat. We'll continue on the other side of the break. She's a professor of history and Italian studies at New York University, NYU, and historian and cultural critic, scholar on fascism and authoritarian leaders, and the author of 7 books, including her latest, Strongmen, From Mussolini to the Present.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Her website is Ruth Ben-Ghiat, RuthBenGhiat.com, and Ruth Ben-Ghiat is her Twitter handle. We are behind, and we only have 4 days to go, including today. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. Pitch in, help out, tag you're it. This is a very difficult time. It's been a tough year, right? I mean, it's been a tough 4 years for all of us, obviously. But for fundraising for nonprofits, particularly nonprofits in the political arena like Free Speech TV, it has been a particularly difficult year because it's an election year, a presidential election year, where literally the fate and future of democracy in the United States was on the line. So a lot of people have just been, throwing their money at politicians or tossing their money, or I didn't mean that, negatively. And there's not a lot left over in many cases for groups like Free Speech TV. And that's why it's so important that if you can make a contribution to Free Speech TV today, if you can sign up and say, yes, I would love to be a regular contributor, count me in. I will, I'll be here for you. Take $30 a month out of my credit card every month, and until I tell you to stop. If you can do something like that, it will mean a lot. It'll mean a lot more than it does in any normal year. It'll mean a lot more than it has in previous years. This has been a tough year, and it's been a particularly tough year for Free Speech TV, and we really need to make this goal. And if we do hit our goal, then we unlock that $10,000 from Andrew, and I believe it's Andrew in San Diego. But we need your help. We need you to make that possible, to make that happen. And that will just kind of push us over the very top, or get us, well, actually, we've got to hit the very top in order to unlock that $10,000 pledge or match. We're still about $80,000 short. It's not an enormous amount of money, but it requires a lot of small gifts. And that's, small gifts are mostly what we get and are much appreciated. They're the foundation of Free Speech TV. So with a regular recurring donations, which are the very best because Free Speech TV can budget, they can plan the next year, they know what's coming in. With regular recurring donations, all of them, you don't even have to ask, you will automatically get this really cool calendar that goes on your refrigerator with magnets, and has some great stuff on it. I think you'll really like it. And with one-time gifts, there's a whole selection of premiums that Free Speech TV is offering. With a $20 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Fight for Democracy, the Free Speech TV Fight for Democracy bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV webcam cover, or the Change Never Happens from the Top Down tote bag, channeling Margaret Mead's famous quote. With a $75 gift, you can get the Thom Hartmann Program mug, or the Free Speech TV camera cover. Or the Free Speech TV black hat. I got that wrong. The camera cover comes with a $50 gift. With a $100 gift, you can have your choice of a set of 2 Free Speech TV face masks, or the sure-to-be collector's item Quarantine 2020 Free Speech TV tumbler. With a $120 gift, you get your choice of the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or the Free Speech TV social distancing kit. With a $120 gift, you get your choice of my book on the hidden history of monopolies, which explains why every American family today is paying $5,000 a year more than we have to for everything from cable and cell phone service to airplane rides and hotel, all because of monopolies. We pay a $5,000, essentially a monopoly tax. We're being ripped off by giant corporations. And I lay it out in this book, how it's happening, why it's happening, where it came from, when it started, and what we can do about it. I think it's a really important book. And, of course, autographed by the author. That's with a $120 gift. Or The Hidden History of American Oligarchy, which won't be out until the spring, but you'll be one of the very first people to get it. And it's about the rise of this, failure of democracy, and how we might go, and the stark choices that we face in a post-Trump world. With a $240 gift, you can join us for our virtual meet and greet, where we hang out and talk kind of offline, although it's online, it's on Zoom, but you know what I mean, it's not public. Or the Free Speech TV hoodie, or both the Oligarchy book and the Monopoly book. And with a $360 gift, there is the Thom Hartmann University winter box. That's The Hidden History of Oligarchy, The Hidden History of Monopolies, a set of 2 Free Speech TV face masks, and the soon-to-be collector's item Quarantine 2020 Free Speech TV tumbler. And with a $1,000 gift, get in line to come to Portland And, once this is all over and we have achieved herd immunity through vaccinations and we're all feeling safe to get on airplanes again or whatever it may be, we're going to have some real special reunions and get-togethers, and I look forward to seeing you. That's with a $1,000 gift. But in addition to any of these one-time gifts, you can also say, oh, and by the way, after you send me that tumbler or that book, also, would you sign me up for $5 a month? I mean, even a small amount, $5 a month, $10 a month, $15 a month, whatever it may be. And help Free Speech TV have some stability, some foundation. Please call now. Thank you so much. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. Our video for our supporters of our program this week that's available over at ThomHartmann.com talks about the radical idea of universal health care. What countries in the world might actually have universal health care, something that, according to Republicans, we're just not smart enough or competent enough or whatever. It's too radical an idea, They include Australia, Austria, Belgium, Canada, Chile, Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Israel, Italy, Japan, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Poland, Portugal, South Korea, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey, and the United Kingdom. So why can't we do it here? Well, because you've got an entire political party, the Republican Party, and a few Democrats who are wholly owned subsidiaries of the health insurance industry. And you got a health insurance industry that's paying its CEOs millions, in one case, United Healthcare, billions, or billion. And so, gridlock. Anyhow, it's over at ThomHartmann.com. Welcome back. We're talking with Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat, professor of history and Italian studies at NYU and the author of the new book, Strongmen, From Mussolini to the Present, among others. And Professor Ben-Ghiat, when I asked you about the rationale for authoritarianism, essentially, your answer embodied all the reasons why an authoritarian strongman would want to be one, or how they would be one. But what I missed, or what I had in mind, and was for the average person, the average, you've got 70 some odd million people who voted for Donald Trump. What is their rationalization? What is the story that he has sold them that causes them to say, yeah, let's put this guy back in office? Whoop, Professor Ben-Ghiat, I'm sorry, I forgot to put you back on the air. Okay, you're back on the air now. My apologies.
It's the same story as we've been told for 100 years, starting when Mussolini claimed that Italy had been humiliated and he had this victim complex and he was going to save the nation. And they used the same tools, the propaganda, and they have these kind of personality cults that rise around them. So this is very important because Donald Trump was very savvy at being what he felt he needed to be to the people to get votes. And many of these men come up with a background in journalism or communications or entertainment, which is really important. So they will be what you need them to be. So Donald Trump started with the America First, and America's been victimized, and only I can fix it. And the other thing they do that's really compelling, and it makes people attached to them early on and be loyal to them, is that they don't just represent the nation like a Democratic small d leader. They embody the nation. So they become the vessel of the nation's, destiny and its greatness, make America great again. I have a whole chapter on myth of national greatness because they all do this. And so they become the embodiment of the nation, and thus they take the hit for the nation. They become the victim of plots and conspiracy theories and witch hunts. And so Trump's he used all these tools, and, Berlusconi used witch hunt, Erdogan talks about witch hunt, Mussolini used to complain he was a victim. So it's very, very convincing to people, because once they believe in him, they will believe whatever he says. And once these personality cults kind of take hold, history shows it's really hard to get rid of them, even when they do criminal mismanagement, disasters. And so we've seen this with Trump, how, it doesn't make sense to many people that he kept over 70 million votes. He got more votes in 2020 than 2016. But that's how it works over and over again. And so the book was written to kind of make sense, or, as much as we make sense of this, of where we are in this long history.
So if he's exploiting our salvationistic worldview, and there's a, literally, Jesus came to save us all from sin, right? From God's wrath or from our own incompetence or whatever. Is this kind of somebody will save us stuff is deeply embedded in our culture, and not so much in some of the older pre-kingdom cultures, the tribal cultures that still exist around the world today. That they tend not to be salvationistic cultures. But if that's so deeply embedded in our psyches and in our culture, and frankly in our body politic, how best do we respond when a leader like Trump comes along and says, "Okay, I'm your savior. I'm the guy who's going to save you"?
Yeah, it's very difficult, and it's frustrating to many people, because, in fact, the people who are acclaimed as the saviors are like the most likely people. For example, and this started with Mussolini, who was a sexual assaulter. He had a criminal record. He was an atheist, such an atheist. He was one of the most, because he had started out as a socialist. But he was the one who was acclaimed by the Catholic Church and made the deal with the Catholic Church that created the Vatican City as an independent as we know it today. So when Donald Trump came along and he makes this very transactional alliance with evangelicals and also Orthodox Jews, and they've been very well served by him. They've gotten a lot from him. And so they acclaim him as there by God's will to rule the nation. And so this is, these strong men, so to speak, they channel these archetypes that are very old, these male archetypes of the savior, the protector, the victim. In fact, Berlusconi in Italy, who didn't wreck democracy, so he's like Trump, but he exerted an authoritarian style rule. He used to say that he was the Jesus Christ of Italian politics. By that he meant both that he was going to save Italy from the left, but he also was taking the hit for it. He was the martyr. So when all these things happen and they conform so closely to everything I had studied, I was just, it can happen anywhere. This is one of the lessons. No culture is immune to this.
So if Joe Biden comes along as president, which he will do presumably on January 20th, and he fails to say, "I'm going to save you," explicitly, or even, strongly implicitly, but instead says, we're all going to work together and we're going to get there, and I'm not the big guy here. It's us, it's we, not me. That kind of stuff, which was one of Bernie's slogans actually for a while. Is that a sufficiently strong response to authoritarianism to cause people to say, okay, we'll abandon the authoritarian and bind ourselves to this leader or this party or this movement or this worldview? Or, how much has Trump altered our political landscape in terms of what it means to be a successful politician going forward? And is it possible for us to flush that brush with authoritarianism out of our system in a relatively short period of time?
There's a lot in that question, but I don't think that Biden is not looking for people to bind to him because he's not an authoritarian. Those are things that, if you want to look in the future and around and say who's acting like an authoritarian, if they're not doing this loyalty oath and the victimhood, there's very clear signs of who these people are early on. We over and over, people don't know, they don't pay attention, or they think they're crazy. So Biden's not going to try and have people bind to him because Democrats with a small d, they're not interested in obedience. They're interested, hopefully, in civil society and collaboration. They represent the nation, but they don't have a proprietary conception of office like Trump did. So in terms of flushing it out of the system, one of the hard truths we have to look at is that the GOP has departed from democratic political culture. They are an authoritarian party. Their political culture is that of authoritarianism now. That might seem like a very strong statement, but it's also backed up by these new comparative politics studies they've been coming out since 2016. They took the rhetoric and platforms of the GOP and put them in the context of global parties. And guess where the GOP lines up? It's not conservative parties. It's like far-right parties, like those of Erdogan in Turkey and Modi in India. So we're looking at an organism backed by the right-wing media universe that traffics in conspiracy theories, does not allow opponents, the idea of opponents that you disagree with but you respect, that's been out the window for some time. And that's why Trump was able to do the lock her up thing and find such support. The same with the press. That's why I was talking about the press becoming a political enemy. You lock them up. But that mentality of lock it up is not a democratic mentality. So Trump has engineered a shift of political culture, and he's legitimized things that were already in the air. And Biden and Harris have to be very vigilant in pushing back at this.
Remarkable. We're talking with Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat, Professor of History and Italian Studies at NYU, the author of 7 books, including her most recent, Strongmen, From Mussolini to the Present. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, BenGhiat.com, and her Twitter handle is Ruth Ben-Ghiat. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Stick around. We'll be right back in our conversation with Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat. So if Trump has transformed the Republican Party into an authoritarian party, I read Tom Cotton's op-ed in the New York Times a while back, a month or so ago, basically praising police in the streets. And it just seemed to me like a fascist screed. Maybe I'm overreacting, but he is, probably in the top 5 in line for the GOP in 2024. How does the Republican Party recover from this?
I see these guys as they're kind of like earthquakes and or volcanoes. We can use whatever image we want. But when they pass through, and sometimes they stay a really long time, the political landscape is never the same. And the parties, historically speaking, the parties that back these people don't, after they go, and none of them, have a good end, they never leave office voluntarily. The parties are never the same. Sometimes, as in the fascist era, they're outlawed, they're dissolved. Mobutu's party was dissolved
the Nazis.
Also. Yeah, and the Nazis, one of the saddest, things for the society is that it ended with mass suicide too. 10 to 20% of all the armed forces, the top brass committed suicide. And so it became a death cult. And their genius, these men, is to get people to act against their own interests, which is why I shed a tear looking at these people not wearing masks and going to Trump's rallies, and women who, a woman said, I'd wade through a sea of COVID to protect Trump. So they fall for it, and only too late do they realize how destructive these men are for society. That's one of the sad lessons, because these men actually despise the people they rule, and they think of them as suckers. And Trump's been trying to extract money from his followers. He's continuing to do that. And I bet he's going to have a counter-inaugural event where he's been advertising to get money from them, because they're just the source of money and adulation. And it's hard to dissolve this kind of culture. So what will happen to the GOP? Already we've seen the Never Trumpers. A lot of people have exited who were more classic conservatives, so the party is a little more splintered. But it's going to take on this kind of settle into this far right, farther right, identity it now has, because it's worked with voters. That's the thing. They retained all these voters. And Ivanka Trump's going to run for Senate. She's being groomed as a world leader for many years now. Trump's been inserting her into world leader photos. Like in 2019, this is crazy. I was totally distressed at seeing this. She was inserted into the group of 20 world leader photo. And she wasn't even on the sideline. She was in the center with her father. So they're grooming her. And so the GOP will continue on its way, but it's going to make governing very difficult for Biden and Harris.
Yeah, I think so. We'll be right back. We're talking with Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat. Her most recent book, Strongmen, From Mussolini to the Present. Her website, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, RuthBenGhiat.com. And her Twitter handle, also Ruth Ben-Ghiat, with an ad at the front. We'll be right back. The Hartmann Report is a free daily podcast, 7 days a week, and you can find our entire 3-hour podcast over at thomhartmann.com. 10 minutes before the hour, we're speaking with Professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat, her latest book, Strongmen, From Mussolini to the Present. Professor, we're looking at the Republican Party. You've got Ivanka Trump, who is moving. She and Jared are moving to this private island off the coast of Florida. There's talk that she's going to try to primary Marco Rubio in next year, basically, and run for the United States Senate. Don Jr., there's talk that he's going to get into politics, perhaps from North Carolina, or some other country that will allow that sort of, jump in at the last minute, carpetbagger thing. Donald Trump, I got 5 emails since 6 o'clock this morning from Donald Trump, or from Ronna McDaniel, or from, I got one from Don Jr. I mean, I'm getting all these emails asking for money to save Georgia, and when you click on them, what you discover is 75% of the money is going to Donald Trump's slush fund, his own private super PAC that he gets to keep, and 25% is going to the RNC to do whatever they want with. I mean, it's just money for Ronna Romney McDaniel. How does the Republican Party come back from this? Or I mean, you've got folks like Steve Schmidt out there, the Never Trumpers, the Lincoln Project folks, saying basically we have to burn the Republican Party to the ground and start over, perhaps with, even with a new name. I mean, what does history tell us about how countries recover from strongman leaders, authoritarianism?
Yeah, I mean, the Republican Party, many of them don't want to come back. Because it worked. Trump got more votes in 2020 than 2016. And their product, which is racism and repression of, non-white votes and all the other things, has worked. Now, how much of this is going to be linked to Trump himself is unsure, but that's why the kids are going to get into politics with Ivanka, and she will run for president, I'm pretty sure, one day. She's already being marketed as such. Some people say there'll be a great new grift. Yeah. And because Trump is not somebody who's going to give up all of these gains. I mean, he can still fleece his borders into funding him and way. Right. So he's not going to give any of that up. And I think he's going to function as a kind of shadow president, trying to delegitimize the Biden administration. It's very dangerous. I see it as a potentially very dangerous situation in the next years, where they will use psychological warfare, everything else they've been setting up for now 5 years, to a little bit repeat the Obama scenario where it's illegitimate. They're doing this where Biden's not a leader. Trump was wronged of something that's rightfully his, the presidency. So what the GOP will do with this, how far they will continue to go for Trump when he's not in power, remains to be seen. And these are politicians, so if the brand so far keeps working for them of authoritarian rule, they will keep it up. If it doesn't, they may become more moderate. Some people say there might be a new party formed from Never Trumpers. I have no idea about that, but historically, these parties don't do very well, but we have an unusual system because we only have two giant parties. Many other places that had authoritarians had more parties and a different system.
So they had a parliamentary system. What is the role of the billionaires in this? Robert Mercer and Rebecca Mercer, I believe that they're behind this new, right-wing Parler, social media site. They funded back in 2016 the whole Cambridge Analytica thing that worked with Zuckerberg and Facebook to get Trump in the White House in the first place, along with a few Russian trolls. What is the role of the institutional power structure in the United States? And I believe we have about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, I think some of these big billionaires, they are the powers that persist. The small politicians come and go, and they persist, backing whoever will meet their goals. And Trump's been very good about, again, this is where these men like Trump are amoral, and they have no principle. Trump wasn't a lifelong Republican. He will go with whoever will give him the best deal and funding, et cetera. So he was very good about allying with some of them. But I think that to protect democracy in the next years, we have to really, take the power of social media more carefully, because Trump, was co-elected by Facebook in a sense, and he learned his team used Facebook in a completely different way than Hillary Clinton did. It was like an e-commerce model. Andrew Morantz of The New Yorker wrote a really good article on this, and they quoted one social media strategist as saying, "Well, it could have been sneakers we were selling, but we were selling Trump." And they placed tens of millions of ads. And the Hillary Clinton campaign only had 65,000 ads. So they were playing a totally different game, which depended on the cooperation of Facebook. And so if you take that example, and also how Trump wouldn't be Trump without Twitter. And I have so my chapters in the book all go over 100 years, so the reader can see what stayed the same, what changed. So one thing that's the same is they all have direct communication channels with the people. So Mussolini used newsreels, Hitler had radio, Trump had Twitter. But in the old-fashioned thing, these were state-controlled, right, in a dictatorship. Today, it depends on partnerships with billionaires and with billionaire-owned social media companies. So unless we broaden our democracy protection perspective to include what to do about these actors, it's going to be difficult to rein in the future Trumps.
Yeah, remarkable. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us, Professor Ben-Ghiat. I really appreciate it. It's been great talking with you.
Likewise.
Thank you. And just a reminder, her book is Strongmen, her most recent book, Strongmen From Mussolini to the Present, as well as numerous others and articles, mostly published over at CNN. You'll find just some great stuff. We'll be right back. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping, More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. X-Chair, changing the world one seat at a time. More information at xchairtom.com. Bloomsy Box, simply better blooms. More info available at bloomsybox.com, code TOM. And Boll & Branch Sheets, crafted for the common good. More info at bollandbranch.com, code TOM.
We are behind, and we only have 4 days to go, including today. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. Pitch in, help out, tag you're it. This is a very difficult time. It's been a tough year, right? I mean, it's been a tough 4 years for all of us, obviously. But for fundraising for nonprofits, particularly nonprofits in the political arena like Free Speech TV, it has been a particularly difficult year because it's an election year, a presidential election year, where literally the fate and future of democracy in the United States was on the line. So a lot of people have just been, throwing their money at politicians or tossing their money, or I didn't mean that, negatively. And there's not a lot left over in many cases for groups like Free Speech TV. And that's why it's so important that if you can make a contribution to Free Speech TV today, if you can sign up and say, yes, I would love to be a regular contributor, count me in. I will, I'll be here for you. Take $30 a month out of my credit card every month, and until I tell you to stop. If you can do something like that, it will mean a lot. It'll mean a lot more than it does in any normal year. It'll mean a lot more than it has in previous years. This has been a tough year. And it's been a particularly tough year for Free Speech TV. And we really need to make this goal. And if we do hit our goal, then we unlock that $10,000 from Andrew, and I believe it's Andrew in San Diego. But we need your help. We need you to make that possible, to make that happen. And that will just kind of push us over the very top, or get us, well, actually, we've got to hit the very top in order to unlock that $10,000 pledge or match. We're still about $80,000 short. It's not an enormous amount of money, but it requires a lot of small gifts. And that's, small gifts are mostly what we get and are much appreciated. They're the foundation of Free Speech TV. So with a regular recurring donations, which are the very best because Free Speech TV can budget, they can plan the next year, they know what's coming in. With regular recurring donations, all of them, you don't even have to ask, you will automatically get this really cool calendar that goes on your refrigerator with magnets and has some great stuff on it. I think you'll really like it. And with one-time gifts, there's a whole selection of premiums that Free Speech TV is offering. With a $20 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Fight for Democracy, the Free Speech TV Fight for Democracy bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV webcam cover, or the Change Never Happens from the Top Down tote bag, channeling Margaret Mead's famous quote. With a $75 gift, you can get the Thom Hartmann Program mug, or the Free Speech TV camera cover, or the Free Speech TV black hat. I got that wrong. the camera cover comes with a $50 gift. With a $100 gift, you can have your choice of a set of 2 Free Speech TV face masks or the sure-to-be collector's item Quarantine 2020 Free Speech TV tumbler. With a $120 gift, you get your choice of the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Free Speech TV social distancing kit. With a $120 gift, you get your choice of my book on the hidden history of monopolies, which explains why every American family today is paying $5,000 a year more than we have to for everything from cable and cell phone service to airplane rides and hotel, all because of monopolies. We pay a $5,000, essentially a monopoly tax. We're being ripped off by giant corporations. And I lay it out in this book, how it's happening, why it's happening, where it came from, when it started, and what we can do about it. I think it's a really important book. And, of course, autographed by the author. That's with a $120 gift. Or The Hidden History of American Oligarchy, which won't be out until the spring, but you'll be one of the very first people to get it. And it's about the rise of this, failure of democracy and how we might go and the stark choices that we face in a post-Trump world. With a $240 gift, you can join us for our virtual meet and greet where we hang out and talk kind of offline, although it's online, it's on Zoom, but you know what I mean, it's not public. Or the Free Speech TV hoodie, or both the Oligarchy book and the Monopoly book. And with a $360 gift, there is the Thom Hartmann University Winter Box. That's the Hidden History of Oligarchy, the Hidden History of Monopolies, a set of 2 Free Speech TV face masks, and the soon-to-be collector's item Quarantine 2020 Free Speech TV tumbler. And with a $1,000 gift, get in line to come to Portland. And once this is all over and we have achieved herd immunity through vaccinations, and we're all feeling safe to get on airplanes again or whatever it may be, we're going to have some real special reunions and get-togethers, and I look forward to seeing you. That's with a $1,000 gift. But in addition to any of these one-time gifts, you can also say, oh, and by the way, after you send me that tumbler or that book, also, would you sign me up for $5 a month? I mean, even a small amount, $5 a month, $10 a month, $15 a month, whatever it may be. And help Free Speech TV have some stability, some foundation. Please call now. Thank you so much.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to our third hour. It seems like it was early this year. Louise and I went to watch a movie that Mark Ruffalo was in about a community that was basically their water supply was poisoned by a Teflon, a product that was used to make Teflon. And it was extraordinary and moving. It was a true story. And now Mark Ruffalo has executive produced a new movie, Invisible Hand. And the directors of that documentary, it's about, well, we'll get into it. We're going to talk about it for this hour. The directors of that new documentary, Melissa Troutman and Joshua Boaz Pribanic, are on the line with us. Invisible Hand is the name of the movie. InvisibleHandFilm.com is the website. And the Twitter handles for the two are Melissa @22 or JBPRIBANIC. And welcome to both of you. And Joshua, I hope I'm not mispronouncing your last name.
Oh, no, I think you got it right. I didn't know if I heard it right, but it was Pribanic.
Okay, thank you. And Melissa, welcome to the program. So if I could start, and let me start by tossing this to Melissa. What brought this documentary about? How did this start? Where did what brought you guys into this?
Well, Joshua and I have both been environmental reporters, investigative journalists for 10 plus years. And it was in our coverage of the pollution brought from the development of fracking in the Marcellus Shale region, and specifically the water contamination resulting from that development, and the cover-up of that water contamination by state and federal authorities in collusion with the companies committing those crimes, that brought us to a place where, we had to sit back and say, we keep seeing the same problem in our reporting all of the time. Pollution happens, harm happens, and corporations get away with it, and government is colluding. So it seems like a hamster wheel or a dead end, and we kind of been searching for, and been asked many, many times by our audiences, well, what do we do? What can be done about all of this? And it's in our coverage. It was through our coverage of water contamination issues that we met the people of Grant Township in Indiana County, Pennsylvania. And the people in Grant Township were adopting an approach that made alarm bells go off in our minds. And that approach is that Grant Township passed a local law that granted the community rights to decide what happens in that community, and also legal rights to nature as a living entity with the right to exist, flourish, and naturally evolve. And
so,
go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were not finished. Keep going.
It was a strategy that really stuck with us, and when we became more and more aware of the work that was happening on the ground around the rights of nature movement. I mean, it wasn't a new concept to us, but when we saw it being used as a way to confront harm directly in the communities we were covering, that's when we realized we need to report on it.
So, the rights of corporations go way back. I mean, the Dartmouth case in 1815 first established their right as artificial persons to stand before courts in the United States. Arguably, those rights were established at the founding of the Republic when it was decided that business entities could pay taxes and things like that, or could be held to pay taxes and could sue and be sued. But and arguably took a big step forward in 1886 with southern, Santa Clara County and all that kind of stuff. But the rights of nature, at the time that the Constitution was written, the people who were writing it perceived nature as just one vast, unlimited, thing that just was, unharmable. Lewis and Clark, when they got out here to the Columbia River, talked about how some of the rivers, the salmon were so abundant that it looked like you could just walk across the river during spawning season. Of course, you couldn't, but it was that dense. Joshua, where that the rights of nature were singularly lacking from our Constitution. What's the history of attempts to recognize rights of nature in American law?
Well, we can't fault the founders for not including rights of nature. It's not a concept that was probably understood or conceived of by them at that time. And you have to think about rights of nature. For me, it comes out of capitalism. It's a defense mechanism and a movement that has been born out of what capitalism has done to this planet. We call the film Invisible Hand for that reason. The idea of the invisible hand has always been something that's a human construct that if you pursue as much profit and, self-interest as possible, you're going to trickle down all of these good things into your community and into the market and everywhere else. And that idea of, the American dream being a very human, anthropocentric perspective is radically changing. And it's not humans who are going to be at the center of decision-making in the marketplace anymore. nature is now becoming the center of decision making in the marketplace. We just saw that this week as water, lo and behold, is going to be traded as a private commodity on the marketplace. So more and more and more, nature is becoming the center and the focus, and that's what Rights of Nature is. Rights of Nature is the opportunity for America to turn in the right direction and actually create an economy and create a government that honors the indigenous legacy that helped them create that government in the first place. Now, they've dishonored it up to this point. They've raped the land. They've pillaged as much as possible. They've broken the treaties. They're breaking the treaties right now up with Line 3 in Minnesota by trying to get have Enbridge push that pipeline through. And Rights of Nature in the film Invisible Hand, you see this amazing opportunity for the world to take a different direction, to take a totally different direction. And this has been happening since 2006 in the States, with the Pennsylvania passing one of the first Rights of Nature bills to confront, sewage sludge and landfill problems. That then went down to Ecuador and got put into a national constitution, and it came back up to the states, and it's been spread across overseas. And you saw Pittsburgh's ban on fracking is actually the largest municipality in the country to include Rights of Nature in their local language, which is amazing. And then in the film, you see Toledo, Ohio, and Toledo becoming, the first community to give rights to Lake Erie, this enormous international body of water. And once Toledo did that, Grant had a lot of attention in the film. They had national headlines with Rolling Stone and those things. And with Toledo went international with it. So now we're looking at
remarkable stuff.
Really,
we're talking with the directors of the new documentary Invisible Hand. InvisibleHandFilm.com is the website. You can check it out. We'll be right back. Stick around. It's 15 minutes past 3.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
InvisibleHandFilm.com. And welcome back. So, Melissa, you open the movie with two very powerful people and concepts. A Native American talking about, the day that the battle between the white snake and the red snake, or serpent rather, will happen, and nature gets involved in all this. And Milton Friedman. Really, I thought it was some of the best footage I've ever seen of Milton Friedman laying out what became the foundation of neoliberal economics and Reaganism and, the world that we've lived in solidly for 40 years and softly prior to that. Can you recap those for us, those perspectives? We have about 4 minutes until we hit another break here. Just to give our viewers and listeners a conceptual frame here.
Sure. Well, the film begins with Diego Minoda, Wolf Clan Seneca Nation, sharing the Haudenosaunee prophecy of the peacemaker prophecy. And this is woven throughout the film, along with the quote-unquote wisdom of Milton Friedman. Courtesy of the Friedman footage, actually, it came from its archival footage from PBS. So way back in the day, PBS did a whole series on free market capitalism, and so throughout the film, these two stories kind of rock back and forth around the battles that are being fought on the ground by communities in the United States and abroad. And the disparity between those two narratives, of course, is that the indigenous knowledge and culture that doesn't even need rights of nature because there was no separation from nature to begin with. Because what rights of nature is it's a legal framework that we're trying to shove into a Western system of law where nature is subjugated to property at best. And so free market capitalism and Milton's theories are about nature as property and private property. And private property is a pillar, one of the pillars of capitalism, right? That's how it gets to function. And that private property is about self-interest. And that is fundamentally different from not just indigenous knowledge and culture, but also democracy. Democracy is about everybody participating. Nature is interconnected. Everything is part of a web of life. And those fundamental realities and beliefs are not a part of capitalism. They are the antithesis of capitalism. And so it's this interplay between the two that like I said, the community battles are woven between.
And brilliantly so. We'll be right back. We're talking with Melissa Troutman and Joshua Boaz Pribanic, the directors of this new brilliant documentary, Invisible Hand. Stick around. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. So we've got a new video up over at thomhartmann.com for the folks who support our program, and it's about exactly why rich people, I'm talking about people who make more than $1 million a year marginally, and over $3 million a year, that group totally. Why this group of people who are multi-millionaires and are literally bringing into the house over $1 million a year and over $3 million a year, why would they want to destroy Obamacare? Turns out there's a very simple answer, and a very straightforward answer, and a rather shocking answer, that they would put all this time and effort, years of work, into trying to kill Obamacare and throw 20, 30, 40,000 people, million people, off their health care. And you can see it, hear it, read all about it, as it were, over at thomhartmann.com in our new members-only video. And welcome back. We're talking about this extraordinary new documentary, and with the directors of the documentary, Melissa Troutman and Joshua Boaz Pribanic, and the co-founders of Public Herald Studios, which is the organization that brought this out. The website is invisiblehandfilm.com. And Melissa, we were just talking about how the Native American perspective sees humanity essentially as interpenetrated by nature. We're all one thing. We are part of the natural world. It is part of us. Whereas Milton Friedman and capitalism, Milton Friedman plays a big role in your movie, in your documentary. Milton Friedman and capitalism view, basically, they've kind of atomized everything, as does our law, and have seen these things as very, very separate. How do we, using a Western, this Western atomistic kind of neo-Cartesian worldview, how do we integrate these two seemingly irreconcilable things, that the idea that humanity is part of nature and doesn't just have an obligation to nature, but it's us, versus humanity stands apart from nature, which, by the way, our religions teach us as well, and that we have both the responsibility to steward it, arguably, or the right to completely overwhelm and dominate it. And our law, I mean, going all the way back to the dominion of discovery, the doctrine of discovery, excuse me, from that papal bull in the 12th century. How do we reconcile these?
Well, reconciliation is a big part of it. And a good place to start would be to reconcile the terrible injustices of settler colonialism. And perhaps in doing so, we could give land back, authority over land back to the indigenous peoples. That's one thing we might be able to do. Mm-hmm. We have the laws we have, and they absolutely must change because otherwise we're done. And I say that that's not hyperbole. We have been living outside of the laws of nature for a very long time. And the physical realities of the world that we live in, such as the carrying capacity of an ecosystem or reciprocity and cause and effect, are not built into our structure of law whatsoever. So how do we get there? We start doing it. There are people who are already doing it, crafting laws that put nature into the foundation of law. The trouble, of course, is that the power structures in place would need to relinquish power in order for this to actually happen. So how do you get imperialistic, capitalistic, colonizer power structures how do you steal their power? There's a lot of different organizing that has to happen. There's a lot of healing that has to happen. And there's a lot of coalescing that have to happen among environmental groups and the general public. That all, we're not talking about this as a strategy on a mass scale yet. And I mean, that's the first step. Legislators, people in power, corporations have to be forced to put power where it belongs, which is in the people. And they must be forced to get our consent in the place within ecosystems to harm us. And somehow we have to figure out how to put nature at the center of our decision-making processes. On our website, invisiblehandfilm.com, we have a page where we have uploaded the laws that have already been written by municipalities all over the United States and I believe some from other countries too. So the examples are right there. Yeah. Now, rights of nature was talked about for a moment within the Democratic National Convention. It was at one point mentioned in a draft of the Green New Deal, but those things have been stripped out. So we really need to rally the people power to kind of lift this strategy up to where the big power sits.
I'm with you. We have a 5-minute break here for the news and whatnot at the bottom of the hour. On the other side of this, let's do a deep dive into the rights of nature. We'll be right back. The movie InvisibleHandFilm.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
The movie is Invisible Hand. The website InvisibleHandFilm.com. We'll be right back. We are behind, and we only have 4 days to go, including today. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. Pitch in, help out, tag you're it. This is a very difficult time. It's been a tough year, right? I mean, it's been a tough 4 years for all of us, obviously. But for fundraising for nonprofits, particularly nonprofits in the political arena like Free Speech TV, it has been a particularly difficult year because it's an election year, a presidential election year, where literally the fate and future of democracy in the United States was on the line. So a lot of people have just been, throwing their money at politicians or tossing their money, or I didn't mean that, negatively. And there's not a lot left over in many cases for groups like Free Speech TV. And that's why it's so important that if you can make a contribution to Free Speech TV today, if you can sign up and say, yes, I would love to be a regular contributor, count me in. I will, I'll be here for you. Take $30 a month out of my credit card every month, and until I tell you to stop. If you can do something like that, it will mean a lot. It'll mean a lot more than it does in any normal year. It'll mean a lot more than it has in previous years. This has been a tough year. And it's been a particularly tough year for Free Speech TV. And we really need to make this goal. And if we do hit our goal, then we unlock that $10,000 from Andrew, and I believe it's Andrew in San Diego. But we need your help. We need you to make that possible, to make that happen. And that will just kind of push us over the very top, or get us, well, actually, we've got to hit the very top in order to unlock that $10,000 pledge or match. We're still about $80,000 short. It's not an enormous amount of money, but it requires a lot of small gifts. And that's, small gifts are mostly what we get and are much appreciated. They're the foundation of Free Speech TV. So with a regular recurring donations, which are the very best because Free Speech TV can budget, they can plan the next year, they know what's coming in. With regular recurring donations, all of them, you don't even have to ask, you will automatically get this really cool calendar that goes on your refrigerator with magnets, and has some great stuff on it. I think you'll really like it. And with one-time gifts, there's a whole selection of premiums that Free Speech TV is offering. With a $20 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Fight for Democracy, the Free Speech TV Fight for Democracy bumper sticker. There's the Free Speech TV webcam cover, or the Change Never Happens from the Top Down tote bag, channeling Margaret Mead's famous quote. With a $75 gift, you can get the Thom Hartmann Program mug, or the Free Speech TV camera cover. Or the Free Speech TV black hat. I got that wrong. With the camera cover comes with a $50 gift. With a $100 gift, you can have your choice of a set of 2 Free Speech TV face masks, or the sure-to-be collector's item Quarantine 2020 Free Speech TV tumbler. With a $120 gift, you get your choice of the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or the Free Speech TV social distancing kit. With a $120 gift, you get your choice of my book on the hidden history of monopolies, which explains why every American family today is paying $5,000 a year more than we have to for everything from cable and cell phone service to airplane rides and hotel, all because of monopolies. We pay a $5,000, essentially a monopoly tax. We're being ripped off by giant corporations. And I lay it out in this book, how it's happening, why it's happening, where it came from, when it started, and what we can do about it. I think it's a really important book. And, of course, autographed by the author. That's with a $120 gift. Or The Hidden History of American Oligarchy, which won't be out until the spring, but you'll be one of the very first people to get it. And it's about the rise of this, failure of democracy, and how we might go, and the stark choices that we face in a post-Trump world. With a $240 gift, you can join us for our virtual meet and greet, where we hang out and talk kind of offline, although it's online, it's on Zoom, but you know what I mean, it's not public. Or the Free Speech TV hoodie, or both the Oligarchy book and the Monopoly book. And With a $360 gift, there is the Thom Hartmann University Winter Box. That's The Hidden History of Oligarchy, The Hidden History of Monopolies, a set of 2 Free Speech TV face masks, and the soon-to-be collector's item, Quarantine 2020 Free Speech TV tumbler. And with a $1,000 gift, get in line to come to Portland. And, once this is all over and we have achieved herd immunity through vaccinations, and we're all feeling safe to get on airplanes again or whatever it may be, we're going to have some real special reunions and get-togethers, and I look forward to seeing you. That's with a $1,000 gift. But in addition to any of these one-time gifts, you can also say, oh, and by the way, after you send me that tumbler or that book, also, would you sign me up for $5 a month? I mean, even a small amount, $5 a month, $10 a month, $15 a month, whatever it may be. And help Free Speech TV have some stability, some foundation. Please call now. Thank you so much. On this week's Science Revolution, Viet Trong with Tom Steyer's Climate Justice joins the show with a vision for a green, red, and blue climate New Deal. That vision includes Native Americans, a blue New Deal for our threatened oceans, and a green New Deal for our coastal communities. Dr. Michael Greger joins us. Have you gained a few COVID pounds? In his new How Not to Diet cookbook, Dr. Greger tells how you can eat your way to a healthy, sustainable weight with plant-based meals. Terry Mills, president of the National Nursing Network, drops by on why a national nurse for public health is important. Plus, Laura Packard, the founder of Healthcare Voices, explains open enrollment under the ACA to help the 16+ million uninsured Americans get themselves enrolled. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Welcome back. We're talking with Melissa Troutman and Joshua Boaz Pribanic, the directors of the new documentary Invisible Hand, executive produced by Mark Ruffalo. They are also the co-founders of Public Herald Studios. InvisibleHandFilm.com is the website. I encourage you to check this out. And Joshua, I was really pleased to see Thomas Lindsay in your movie. I've known Thomas for 20 years and been a big admirer of his work. I've written about his work, in fact, in 2 different books. And I think that the whole injection well comes to town story that is sort of a framing device or a narrative, part of the narrative arc of your documentary, is such an important way to convey to people what the stakes are and how the game is played and possible responses that may or may not work short term and or alternatively may or may not work long term. You want to tell us that story?
Sure. You're talking about it in respect to, dealing with an oil and gas company in your town. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. I have in my head Grant Township. I'm sorry, I don't have it all right in front of me. But the town where the fracking company was coming to town and saying,
Grant Township,
we're going to put the injection well here in your backyard, and the people were saying to the company, would you want this in your backyard? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I got breaking news for you. Grant Township has just been sued again by the oil and gas company in the film. That just came out today. And what's going on is these oil and gas companies are scared to death of this rights of nature movement and the consequences of nature having the same rights as a person in the court where they have the same rights as a person. They've never had to deal with that argument in the court, and when the day that comes that they do, they're just going to crumble. Because once it starts to get out of the regulatory hands, once it starts to get out of the state agencies and federal agencies who are completely captured regardless of which political administration is running it, and it starts to go down to the local hands, and each member of the community starts to speak on behalf of nature, and that is juxtaposed to the corporation speaking on behalf of itself, you're going to be pretty hard-pressed to get a jury who isn't going to side with the community's voice. for nature in these situations. And we should say, this is not a Democrat-Republican situation. In Grant Township, that's a majority Republican community. I mean, they voted for Trump in this election. And they also have a rights of nature bill, which is confronting oil and gas corporations. Now, why would that happen? It seems like a complete contradiction. It happens because they don't want big government telling them what to do, and they're all on private water supplies, and they want to be able to protect their water. And that means that they have to go above and beyond the existing structure of law to keep that water safe. And rights of nature became something that was available for, to them to do that. And you mentioned Thomas.
So
Thomas is one of the ones who brought that into the community. And of course, you see the dramatic change that happened there in the twist, the plot twist in the film.
He is just one of the most brilliant and innovative lawyers out there. But it just, for people who may not know what we're talking about here, could you very quickly explain what an injection well is and why frackers need them?
Yeah, injection wells are the ways that the oil and gas industry gets rid of all the radioactive and toxic waste that they produce in this country. And it's essentially a cavern in the ground. In many cases, it's just an abandoned oil and gas well where they sucked all the oil out of the ground, and now they have this cavern in there that's empty. And the idea is to take this extremely radioactive waste. All of the waste in the oil and gas industry is radioactive. Public Herald has been the lead on that report. We just came out with a news story yesterday where oil and gas whistleblowers talk about handling this radioactive waste. And they can't put it anywhere else because they have so much of it. They can't just, throw it into a treatment plant because it'll just bog down the treatment plant and ruin it. So they have this injection well set up where they get permitted to take extremely dangerous material, dump it underground, and leave it there in perpetuity as if it's not going to communicate with a water well or anything else. So it's a horrible, horrible system that we've been living with now for the last 40 years or so.
So how did this township, Melissa? How did this township try to stop the gas company from putting millions of gallons of radioactive and poisonous water into their ground when so many of these families drink groundwater? I mean, they have wells, and the community has wells. What was their first effort to stop this? Where did they start?
Trying to work within the regulatory regime that we already have. Thinking, for sure, once the federal EPA or the State Department of Environmental Protection, because they have very nice-sounding names, surely once they see the situation we're in, that we have no alternative water supplies. There are no public municipal water supplies that we can tap into if our groundwater is contaminated. Once the regulators see our situation, they're not going to let this happen because it makes no sense.
Right.
And then the regulators were like, oh, yeah, we're going to let that happen. And so the community also went to the corporation directly and said, okay, well, if you're going to do this, will you at least put money aside to get us water if you contaminate our water? And the corporation said, no, we're not going to do that. And so faced with, after doing their due diligence, faced with what to do, they simply decided that they weren't going to let it happen. And the way that they did that was that they got the help of the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, CELDEF, and the organizers there helped them craft a local law, a local Bill of Rights, that said nature has rights, and we are going to defend those rights. A corporation cannot come in and tell us what they are going to do. We will decide what they're going to do. And by the way, nobody's allowed to inject toxic waste into our subsurface in this township because of the harms and the risks that we, the people who live here, are not willing to take on for someone else's private gain.
And so the response to that was what, Melissa?
The response to that was that Grant Township got sued by the corporation and by the Department of Environmental Protection, by its own regulatory agency. And as one of the township supervisors in Grant says in the film, why is it that when we're trying to protect our water, and then the State Department, the state regulatory agency, also claims that it's trying to protect our water, why, if we're both doing the same thing, are they suing us? And it's very simply because in the structure of law we have in the United States and other countries, we are the children, and big government is the parent, and the parent's best friend is the corporation, and they get to decide what happens. Period. Not only that, but they have decided that nature is just property.
Doesn't this run head on into the idea of sovereignty? Isn't the right word? I forget the word for when a federal government has supremacy over a state government has supremacy over preemption. Is a piece of it. Yeah. Yeah. How is that the sticking point here? That the EPA is lord over all?
Here's the sticking point. A whole bunch of years ago, a bunch of property-owning men wrote some words on paper, and that's the regime that we operate under today.
Right.
And that's the sticking point. And the only way out of that is to demand that that is not the law of the land. That there is a new law of the land, one that actually requires consent and that makes us live inside the laws of nature, because if we don't, then everybody dies.
Yeah, we're toast. We're talking with Melissa Troutman and Joshua Boaz Pribanic, the directors of the new documentary Invisible Hand, executive produced by Mark Ruffalo. And they are the co-founders as well of Public Herald Studios that's been at the forefront of a lot of this stuff. InvisibleHandFilm.com is the website. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And this is one of the most extraordinary, well-done documentaries I've seen in years. You really need to check it out at InvisibleHandFilm.com. And welcome back, Joshua. Where are the rights of nature at in the United States? I mean, legally speaking, have they been? How far do you think we are from establishing rights of nature as a coherent, consistent, recognized, Supreme Court approved legal doctrine in this country?
We're pretty damn close, in my opinion, considering where we were, let's just say, in 2011 or 2010 when fracking started, when rights of nature was something, if you talked about it, it was like talking about sci-fi. Now it's become the reality and an option for communities to take, which is profound. I did not think we would be here this quickly as someone who's been involved with this since like 2006 and 7. But with the courts, where we are with the courts is that the rights of nature has a chance to defend itself in court with the recent lawsuit that was brought against Grant Township by Pennsylvania General Energy. Because Pennsylvania General Energy names rights of nature in that lawsuit and says that the rights of nature in Grant Township is void and unenforceable, I'm quoting it here, because it violates the Equal Protection Clause, the First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the Contracts Clause of the United States Constitution. So that is the defense mechanism right now that the corporations are using to fight rights of nature and to prevent it from getting into court. And they're doing that by saying, this is unconstitutional. we shouldn't even have to argue this case. You need to throw out this community's Bill of Rights, throw out their home rule charter, and let us come in and dump this waste, because we have a right to do that. We're a person. Nature's not a person. Let's just get it done with. So that's where it is right now with the courts. And in Pennsylvania, Representative Daniel Friel-Otten is working with CELDEF. They have put in something to create a state amendment to the Constitution, which would allow rights of nature to be placed into the state's constitution. That would then sit alongside the environmental rights clause that's there right now, which is Section 127 of the PA Constitution. And those are two different things. Environmental rights is a very anthropocentric version of what to do with these environmental problems. Rights of nature is a completely ecocentric version. It means nature's at the center of decision-making, not humans specifically.
Yeah, and ultimately that's a reality that we're all going to have to recognize, I think. Which court is this being argued in?
It's going to be argued in, I believe, I think it's a state court here in Pennsylvania, down in Pittsburgh. Right. I don't believe this is a federal court, but I'd have to double check on that and get back to you, to be honest.
At this moment, yeah. So it's fascinating. I mean, there is so much here. Your movie does such a great job of just kind of laying this all out. Your documentary. I'm so impressed by the work that you guys have done. We'll be right back with to wrap up our conversation with Melissa and Joshua here, the directors of this new documentary, Invisible Hand. The website, invisiblehandfilm.com, and really worth checking out. We'll be right back. The hidden history of the war on voting tells how the GOP has been stealing elections for decades and will again this year unless we stop them. For our video this week for supporters of our program, you can find it over at thomhartmann.com. We're talking about endocrine disruptors as modulators of obesity. This is, in fact, the title of the article in Cell Endocrinology was Endocrine Disruptors as Obesogens. Why is it that almost a third of Americans are obese? And that's not true of, say, Italians. And it turns out there's actually a single measurable, definable variable. There's a category, or actually several broad categories of chemicals that are found in the American food supply in particular places, and therefore fairly easy to avoid, that actually disrupt our endocrine system, our hormone system, and cause us to crave more food, to eat more food, and also downregulate our metabolism so that we burn less energy so that food gets stored as fat. You can check it out at thomhartmann.com. Welcome back. We're talking about this extraordinary new documentary, Invisible Hand. The website, invisiblehandfilm.com. Is the website. Joshua, you said that at one point that this is neither Democratic or Republican, that in fact most of the people in this particular township that's featured in the movie, Grant Township, voted for Donald Trump in the last election, probably both of the last two presidential elections. Have either of the political parties, I mean, given that this is so transpartisan or suprapartisan, above partisanship. Have either of the political parties taken this seriously? I know the Democratic Party, at one point touched on it in debates around the platform, as I recall, 4 years ago. Maybe I'm wrong, but where is our political system at with regard to this?
I mean, if I'm talking about it, from the perspective as an investigative journalist and reporting on this story, it looks like what's happening is that both the Republican and Democratic parties who take their cues with these situations from the green organizations, that the green organizations are not necessarily communicating rights of nature to the political spectrum. And because of that, there's no established platform by, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party to include rights of nature in their policies, in their values, in their beliefs. And the same is true, let's just say, for the Green Party. I mean, you'd think the Green Party would have this, sit in front and center as one of the policies and options to combat climate change, as a form of climate action, or, dealing with indigenous rights, or it's really a unifying concept. So unify all these different fronts under one platform. Even they don't have anything established, so they can be criticized just as well. Melissa mentioned the Democratic National Convention has considered including it, but it didn't get in. So right now it's still getting pushed away. And that's a problem because corporations are way ahead of these guys. Okay, corporations are way ahead of both parties. They've been drafting bills. They've got bills passed in Ohio. They've got bills passed in Florida. The Florida vote just happened down there, and they passed rights of nature for Orange County, which is the largest county in the country to pass it. And I asked the lawyers, I said, what does this really mean? Because there's a state preemption. The state preemption says you can't bring a rights of nature case into the court. And the lawyers just say, listen, if there's a state preemption, basically it just means that they pass the ballot where it says that 89% of the people poll for rights of nature because they can't bring a case into court. So corporations are, like usual, far ahead of the political parties, and the only way to change that is really for the communities to vote differently and put people in office who respect this stuff and who understand this stuff.
Right. And just to clarify, these corporations that are writing these laws that are being passed by these legislators, like in Florida, they are not recognizing the rights of nature. They are saying that local communities may not recognize the rights of nature. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It says very concisely. Ohio did it with a budget bill. They passed a budget bill and they put a clause in that said no community shall bring any case that includes rights of nature into the Ohio courts. The same is true for other places. They're very simple things like this. However, the new one that's been proposed for Minnesota says things about if you're an unnatural thing, if you're not part of human life, essentially, then you can't bring a case into the court. Which is really interesting the way that they draft that, because the corporations might have shot themselves in the foot, because it's written from this very, very microscopic human viewpoint, and the way that it's written, it could mean that the natural person doesn't include the corporation, so therefore the corporation's personhood could be in question because they try to preempt rights of nature in that state.
Melissa, we have a little less than a minute left. What are your thoughts on how we need to, do we need more of a cultural change or a political change or a legal change here?
This is a cultural disease born of the experiment that is industrial civilization. We absolutely need a complete cultural paradigm shift. And when you asked Josh earlier, how close are we to that happening? I don't go to politics or the market or any other indicator other than nature herself. I mean, she's in charge here. She bats last, and we're going to have to start living by her rules. We do not have a choice.
Yeah, she's starting to kick our ass. That's what's going on. Melissa Troutman, Joshua Boaz, Pribanic, you guys are just doing great work. InvisibleHandFilm.com. Thank you both so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Tom.
Great talking with you. And we will be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Thank you for being with us today. And in the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you. Get out there, get active, tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit ThomHartmann.com.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. X-Chair, changing the world one seat at a time. More information at xchairtom.com. Bloomsy Box, simply better blooms. More info available at bloomsybox.com, code TOM. And Boll & Branch Sheets, crafted for the common good. More info at bollandbranch.com, code TOM.